It's stage 7 of Giro d'Italia 2013. It's 177 kilometers for the riders from Marina di San Salvo to Pescara. And already a group has developed out front. 6 riders are slugging away, toiling in the Apennines, in the hills of the Abruzzo region. 6:34, as you see on your screen, is the advantage for 6 riders out front. Man on screen is Martin Cialinghi, 35-year-old. Martin Cialinghi is joined by Dominique Rollin of Française de Jeu. The man from Lotto Belisol there on screen is Adam Hansen. Pim Lichtart, who's been very active so far in Giro d'Italia from Vacances-Soleil, is in there. So too Emanuele Sella, the old stager from Androni Giocattoli, and the only Greek rider, the first Greek rider in the history of Giro d'Italia, Ioannis Tamaridis of the Euskaltel team. And there's Lichtart, and these riders, well, it took them about 30 kilometers to get the break established today, so obviously it would appear that there was plenty of ambition in the bunch. Attacks coming hot and heavy right from the very start in Marina di San Salvo. And it took a long time for these riders to manage to establish an advantage, and even when they did, there were several riders that attempted to jump across to them, so they hovered at around about a minute for quite a while before eventually the decision was made that this was the break of the day. And probably the team with most ambition to get into the break was the Vini Fantini squad. And here we look at the peloton, and it's the Vini Fantini team that are setting the pace. They're setting the agenda and trying to keep this break under control. Perhaps they can get a rider involved later on in those hills that come with increasing rapidity closer to the finish. 3 riders from Vini Fantini on the front. We got a shot of Paolini, the race leader. It's Rigoberto Uran, second in the standings, just 17 seconds behind Paolini. Perhaps a thought that he could get into Maglia Rosa today if Paolini struggles. Paolini, who's a great man for the one-day classics, his first visit to Giro d'Italia at the age of 36. He's having a great race, and he said that he's going to treat today like a one-day classic, and he's going to put absolutely everything he can into preserving that Maglia Rosa through to the time trial tomorrow. He's absolutely certain, as far as he's concerned, that he's going to lose it in the time trial, but he would at least to have the half-pink in that 54.6 kilometer test tomorrow afternoon. So Iran is getting a bit of attention back at the team car, and the Vini Fantini squad have taken it up. As I say, they've got some local riders. Best known of those, of course, is Danilo DeLuca. Hails from Pescara. Also Matteo Rabatini and Fabio Tabora. And Rabatini it was that tried to race across to the break, but wasn't given any leeway by the peloton. Man who won the mountains classification jersey in last year's Giro d'Italia. Also won a stage last year. So Rabatini, a very dangerous man to let away, and the peloton weren't up for that. And also Fabio Tabora, who's been quite active so far in Giro d'Italia, also a local man, and will have ambition, you can be pretty sure about that. Sean, it's a pretty tough stage for them today, and this is not the sort of stage that the overall contenders would have liked to see the day before the time trial. They would have been looking for a quiet day, and I'm not so sure it's going to be as quiet as they'd like.
No, it's not going to be quiet, certainly not in the end. It's a difficult day all day, and in the end it gets more and more difficult. As you said in the opening part of the programme, it's like a shark's mouth there open when you look at the profile for today, so it is going to be a very difficult one. And the big favourites, they would prefer a flat day. Yesterday, of course, would have been a perfect day just before the time trial, but unfortunately, no, today is going to be a difficult one. And we can see at the moment, you know, they're controlling the race a bit. This breakaway 6:49. If it comes down to they're going to catch the breakaway in the end, well, then it's going to be very aggressive racing, and it's going to be a very energy-sapping run in here in the final, because a lot of short hills but very, very steep, so it will be aggressive racing and nervous racing as well. And we can see there some of the riders putting on their gilets, a little bit of a shower at the moment, and if we get that towards the end, that will make it also much more nervous, because this roadway up and down all the time, it will be very dangerous in the final.
Yeah, weather conditions very changeable in the region, as they've been for the last few days, so You can't bank on the conditions staying the same for any length of time, and of course as they go up and down through the hills, more likely to encounter showers, so that's another potential hazard. And the GC contenders, well, it's a potential banana skin stage, you'd say, for them. And Bradley Wiggins, after the little scares that he's had in the last few days, losing 17 seconds a few days ago, and then yesterday caught behind that crash late on, and having a chase back that, well, he really didn't need. He certainly didn't want. He did get back without too much difficulty, and indeed Dave Brailsford afterwards paid tribute to Mark Cavendish and the Omega Pharma Quick-Step team that had been setting the pace for the peloton, and he paid tribute to the fact that the Omega Pharma Quick-Steps throttled back and decided not to push. And Cavendish in turn said, well, it wasn't just us, the other teams as well. There was a bit of discussion about whether they'd ride or not. You see Steve Cummings of the BMC team on the front of the group and doing his turn. And yes, Cavendish said there was a bit of a discussion about it, but there was it was decided that no, we're not going to ride in this situation. We're not going to take advantage of any difficulty for any of the general classification men. And Brailsford and the Sky team were absolutely delighted with that. Lamprey team distributing gilets and rain jackets. A lot of riders going for a sleeveless gilet. Some go for the long sleeve full rain jacket, which of course flaps around in the wind a little bit and pays a bigger penalty when the rain goes away, when things hot up again. You can get extremely hot indeed. Through the feed zone for the leading riders up front. Almost 7 minutes now their advantage, so clearly the peloton is very confident of closing this one down. There was some discussion about whether Emanuele Sella, man on the left hand side of your screen from Androni Giocattoli, the white colours with the blue flashes, blue helmet there. 56th overall at 6 minutes and 52 seconds, so he is he's the virtual race leader by fully 2 seconds at the moment. Could potentially leap up the classification if he still has legs if and when this group is caught later on. And a man with an interesting pedigree in cycling, you'd have to say. 32 years of age, 1 stage win in the Giro back in 2004. He did have a few stage wins from 2008, but they were later extinguished from the records due to a ban for Sarah, the third generation of EPO. He admitted using it and served out his suspension and is now back in the peloton with Androni Giocattoli. So these 6 riders up front, 7 minutes handy advantage for them, Sean, at the moment, but the hills, well, that means you can actually give the break a little bit more of a leeway, because it's a little bit easier when the hammer goes down from behind to close up on the hills late on.
Yes, well, this very difficult final, the breakaway, they would need a big advantage going into the final 50 kilometres, and they're not being allowed to pull out enough of an advantage, as we can see here, 7 minutes. And you know, the Vini Fantini team are controlling here. I think Director Sportif not happy at all that there's nobody up there, because we did hear the interview from the Director Sportif, Parsani. He said that it's an important stage for us, and you can be guaranteed that in team briefing this morning before the start, right guys, if there's a breakaway 4 or 5 riders, we have to have a rider in it. And unfortunately, you know, they didn't do that, and now they're having to ride to keep control on things, and other teams will also get involved later on. But if you're allowed to take the breakaway 12-15 minutes, well, then a lot of the teams will say, well, we're not going to catch that. And it's also with Katusha, will they control it if there's a lot of riders up front and it's becoming difficult for them? They might say, well, what's the point? We have the jersey today for the time trial tomorrow, starting in the position with the jersey for Paulini might not be that really important, so they might just say, well, we're not going to chase down this break, and that's the reason we see Vini Fantini just keeping the lid on things.
6 riders up front with 7 minutes advantage. Welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. As the riders are working their way towards Pescara, the leading group have 6.5 minutes advantage. 6 riders up front, and their advantage has been pared down significantly, well, about half a minute in the last in the last few minutes. I can tell you that Pim Lichtart in the break has hit problems. He's had a fall and he is attempting to chase back on. So you can see on screen here there's 5 riders in the group, 5 riders up front, because Pim Lichtart of the Vacances and Sella team has dropped out of the group, having crashed on the descent. So this treacherous roads, very broken up, difficult surface for the riders, and you can see, and there is Pim Lichtart. Oh, and very unfortunate for the young Dutchman, who's limping over and hoping to get another bike. And you can clearly see with the blood streaming from that elbow wound that, well, he'll be feeling the pain. And he'll wince a little in the shower tonight. As Lichtart, well, they're a little bit slow about getting this bike going. Looks as if that's his race bike. Yeah, it is. It has the number on it. The man who won the Dutch Road Race Championship a couple of years ago. And no sign of panic from Lichtart, but his likelihood of getting back into the break, well, it's dwindling with every moment that he's waiting here, waiting to get a bike. So they're not too quick about getting this thing sorted. Let's get a replay, and oh, that's pretty sore looking. Lichtart leading the group through that hairpin, and he was the man who came to grief first. There's a little gap from him to the riders behind. Meanwhile, in the peloton, and the gap has gone back out to 7 minutes as the peloton have stalled a little bit. The skies very grey and overcast in the Abruzzi region, and I can tell you that in Pescara there's a little sprinkling of rain at the stage finish. One hopes, for the sake of the riders, that that will have abated by the time they make it at the conclusion of this 177-kilometre jaunt. So difficult moments for Lichtart, and difficult moments getting going again.
Yes, and we could see the neutral car trying to get him back on the road again. There was no team car there, which is surprising because we could see the Androni team car going through. So with 6 minutes plus of an advantage, all the team cars would be up to the second team car, of course. So surprising that he hadn't got the team car. If he had that, well, he could get a bike change very quickly and get back. But it looks like the time he's losing there on the roadside trying to get the bike fixed, he's not going to make it back into the break again.
Well, they got the chain on pretty quick, so it looked as if there weren't any derailleur issues, but perhaps there had been some damage to that frame. But a difficult moment, and he's electing not to take a bike from neutral service, rather wait for the Vacances and Sella car to get to him.
We did see the Vacances and Sella car just arriving there, but it was at least a minute and a half plus before they did arrive, so they must have been stopped for a moment and just the wrong time. And sometimes, you know, they maybe they pull over for the team directors as well. They pull over for, you know, to go to the
natural
toilet,
break.
a natural break, yes. And it's always worrying times. I know from my experience when I do some of the races as well, when you follow, and if you're in, you know, in the following a breakaway, it's always you have to make the calculation when is the best time to do that, and you try and say, well, you know, you do it on the flatter sections, but here, of course, today there's not many of them.
Manuele Sella up front. Have you done much de-essing then, Sean? Is it director sportif, the sort of role that you would have liked after your career?
No, not at all. And I've been in the team car with the on post chain reaction team, and I do some of the races with the director sportif from Belgium. But it's so boring there following the race, and a lot of the time when you're in a breakaway out front like this and you're following there for 3-4 hours, the day gets so long. I just find it difficult how the director sportifs can do it in a 3-week tour. And, you know, you have to be really keen and like that job.
You'd have to be very keen indeed, and unfortunately for Lichtart, his Vacances and Sella team car not present at that moment. He has got a bike, we understand, and fingers crossed he'll be able to get back into the group. Okay, Rabatini, as I said, one of the local riders with great hopes for stage 7, and he was interviewed before the stage. Well, he was asked what is the most difficult of the Strappo, the hills. He said certainly the Strappi of Villabretri, set at 15 kilometres to the finish, will split the peloton. But there's the first of these Strappi already at 60 kilometres, and that will be tough. Oh, that was Domenico Poncevivo of the AG2R team.
Yes, the confusion there. We were told it was Rabottini was coming on, but unfortunately it's Pozzovivo, another one of the great climbers, and a rider that will be hoping to get through today. The riders that are not comfortable in a day like today with the wet conditions, we just see there with Pim Lichtart how slippery it is. Like, he was leading down but wasn't pushing anything extra, and the other riders were lucky that just they managed to get around him, because we could have seen all of the breakaway on the ground there on that corner.
Yeah, tiptoeing around those corners, and of course the Peloton will be warned that that's a particularly treacherous section. They had the advantage, pretty much everyone in the race had the advantage of knowing just how treacherous it was. As we see Emanuele Sella, diminutive figure, controversial figure, but back in the Peloton, having served his suspension, and on stage 4 he got into the break, but they well, he was still very, very close to the top of the overall standings at that point, just a couple of minutes down. As we see Lichtart now on Vacansoleil chasing back on, showing the scars of battle. And he won't be thinking too much about his elbow at the moment. Right now it's about closing down. It'll be interesting to see whether the break decide to wait for him.
Yes, it will be interesting now, because he's back on the bike. It looked like that he was so relaxed there. He was given in to get back into the breakaway, and just going to wait for the bunch. That's the way it looked. The way he was just very casual at the side of the road. But he seems to be working hard at it now, and it will be interesting to see out front, will they knock it off a bit. If they do, he'll get back very quickly, because he is going very strong at the moment, and possibly will say, well, we need a strong one up front here, and just to take it easy for a moment and allow him to get back into the breakaway.
Well, Dominique Rollin is looking pretty good, very comfortable, just a few bike lengths ahead of the other riders. The man from Française de Jeu, 131st overall at 32 minutes and 25 seconds in arrears, so not a factor overall at the moment. 30 years of age, originally from Boucherville in Quebec, and enjoying the Giro d'Italia 2013 despite the difficult weather that they're facing at the moment. It's not too horrific at the moment, they're able to see, but they'll hope that it doesn't get any worse at the moment. So got about 84 kilometers to go. Race route is moving further inland through Castelfrantano, Guardagriel. Here's Lichtart. Been pretty active so far in the race. He was in the break at least one of the days, and he's had plenty of efforts to get in other moves as well. Very motivated at the moment. 204th signing on this morning, 1 hour and 5 minutes down, so it's about survival for Lichtart in so many ways, but it's great to see a guy who's that far down on GC is he's not afraid to try and get up the road and into groups.
And that's the case of a lot of the riders, I suppose. When you look at the general classification, they are a long ways down, but you not always take everything from that, because the days that the running is very difficult, they just say, well, I'm not going to get anything out of the stage. Take it easy in the last 25-30 kilometers when there are some climbs in the final, and spare your energy for other days, get into the break, and that's what a lot of them do here, and that's a lot of the riders we're probably seeing who are quite a long ways down the general, but still feeling quite good, because to get into the break today, it was aggressive at the start, and unless you're in good shape, you don't manage to do that.
And Dominique Rollin is having a little bit of a conversation with Adam Hansen of the Lotto Belisol squad, and no doubt the conversation is, well, do we wait for Lichtart or not?
Yes, I think we could see Roland there just saying Lichtart is on the way back. He's been made aware of that, from his director sportif, that he's closing the gap down. So just take it easy for a moment, and you'll lose 10 or 15 seconds. But with the extra man up there, it means a lot more than that in the end.
Well, the quicker he gets in there, the quicker he can contribute, and the longer it takes him to get in there, the more energy he's using. So just stall, get him back in, and then have a reset. There's still a huge gap between Lichtart to the peloton behind, more than 7 minutes. So certainly well worth making it easy as possible for him to get back in as quickly as possible, as Vinny Fantini and BMC in parallel formation. Vinny Fantini in the yellow colours, BMC the squad of Cadel Evans, and there is Danilo DeLuca. winner of this race in 2007. Based, as I said, in Pescara, so lots of the local fans will be hoping that he can give them something to cheer about today. As I said, 2 other members of his team, and indeed the team sponsors as well, are based in the Abruzzo region, so they'll be very, very active throughout the day. I don't doubt it. Also, Dario Cataldo of the Sky team, he's a local rider, and he'll hope to have recovered from the virus that he's been suffering. And do you think there's any chance for Cataldo? Will Bradley Wiggins, you know, allow and the team squad allow him off the leash to try and do something himself, or will the focus be entirely on looking after Wiggins?
Well, I think he would be allowed in the final, depending on what way the race goes into the last 20 kilometres. But if there's a number of the Sky riders there with Bradley Wiggins, well then Cataldo, I think he would be allowed to play his own card. I'm worried about Cataldo because he has been suffering the last number of days because with the sickness, and I don't think he's going to be recovered enough to do this final in good shape. Cataldo will be a really good one for this, and as we see DeLuca there as well, you know, from the area, if he goes in the attack and you know the descent very well, that's a little bit of an advantage, of course, but it's all about having good legs in the final at this stage today.
And a man with reasonably good legs at the moment is Pim Lichtart. He's just about back to the group. Up front, the 5 riders up front, as the Vini Fantini team set a steady tempo on the front of the peloton. Luca Paolini has a little chat with Danilo DeLuca. All seems very relaxed. Those 2 Italian riders will know each other. Both been around a long time. And the Maglia Rosa group is rolling along at a steady rate. Pim Lichtart is just about with those 5 riders up front. Join us for the next part after these few messages. Welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia 2013. 177 kilometers for the riders today as they work their way towards Pescara from Marina di San Salvo. 6 riders up front have a handy advantage of over 7 minutes. Pim Lichtart has managed to make it back into that move after his crash. Safely back in the group, and lots of difficulties for riders. We see Vini Fantini riders, Cannondale and Katusha coming to a halt. Bit of a traffic jam there as they hit this little upward section, and riders with chains coming off. That's disappointing. Presumably they went from the big ring to the small ring and the chain came off, but so that's Sarmiento of the Cannondale squad, who's waiting for his team car. He's going to have to take another bike. Well, presumably he is, unless the mechanic is able to fix things. No, he's gone for another bike. He'll grab a bottle from the cage, leave that, and hope to get back into the peloton as quickly as possible. So Sarmiento of the Cannondale squad.
Come on, you can do it.
Yeah. 3 minutes and 4 seconds down, so he's still well placed overall. Lichtart getting a little bit of attention from the medical personnel, and they'll put a bit of powder on that. Easier said than done. Might even be liquid. And the worry is that that would get infected out on the road. He probably won't be thinking too much about it at the moment, but it's something that'll affect him later on this evening, and might be a bit stiff and sore starting tomorrow.
Yes, it looks to be a bit of a deep cut. Sometimes when you slide down like that, you just get a normal road rash, and you know, it's nothing at all. But sometimes if you really smack out of the road, you can get a pretty deep wound, and that looks a pretty deep one there at the moment.
Well, there have been plenty of riders in the wars as we get a little replay of it was a crash actually, so yeah, someone went down, all the rest of them were delayed. And the one that had the biggest problem was Sarmiento of the Cannondale squad. Also Katusha's Vicioso, who was involved in the sprint finish the other day. It's difficulties there. Lichtart still getting attention. His breakaway companions Sella, Tamarides, Hansen, Chalingi and Rollin continue to ride on. The blood on his left-hand mitt will be a souvenir, I think, for the future. Meanwhile, Vinny Fantini continued to set the agenda on the front. Yeah, talking about riders in the wars, we had two riders who didn't start today. One of them was Lee Howard of Orica Greenedge, joining the list of retirements. Great disappointment for Lee Howard. Caught in that crash late on yesterday, broke his left collarbone and went down on his shoulder. We did get a sight of it during the stage. You can see the dirt on his Orica Greenedge jersey on the left-hand side. He finished the stage just 37 seconds down on Mark Cavendish and the lead group. So great effort from the 23-year-old in his second Grand Tour, but unfortunately diagnosed with a cracked collarbone, and he's been told he need at least 10 days off the bike. So disappointment for Howard. Also a couple of other riders who've failed to start or finish, but in the meantime let's hear from Fabio Baldato. Fabio says in the Tirreno Adriatico we made some of these strappy. They could be dangerous and provoke some kind of moves and split the peloton. We need to be very aware in front, but also to keep a cold head and to think about the day after. So that is the concern really for these riders, that they, for the leading GC contenders, that they keep a weather eye on what's going on around them, but try and save as much energy for that time trial tomorrow, because it really is a tough time trial.
Yes, yes, certainly the guys who have to do the time trial. Of course, there's a lot of riders in here who's going to just ride the time trial at 90%, but the general classification men, they don't have that choice. They just have to go and give it their 100%, and so there's going to be teams and general classification men thinking about conserving as much energy as possible. And with the stage we have today, it's a perfect stage for somebody going in the attack. And there is teams there. We can see Vinny Fantini, of course, with DeLuca and some of the other riders. They are not really interested in the time trial tomorrow. The stage today is important for them because of their sponsors from the region. They know the region well, the local riders from here, so they're going to really go for it. And the big favourites just have to follow the race, and that's going to be a difficult day for them before such an important time trial tomorrow.
Okay, just getting back to the riders who have retired from the race. Also DNSing today, not starting this morning, Klaas Ludwig of the BMC squad, 195th overall at just over 50 minutes down, so no luck for Klaas, and he's had to stop. So a disappointment for the BMC team. They've lost a rider, and that will be particularly disappointing, I suppose, for Cadel Evans in his efforts to win this race overall. And crashing out on the road, Mattia Cataneo. He crashed after just 3 kilometers. The young man making his Giro debut, former baby Giro winner. And Mattia Cataneo unable to continue, so massive disappointment for the Lampre Merida rider, and disappointing too, I suppose, for Michele Scarponi, as his numbers have been reduced. Greg Abol was in the wars yesterday too, was involved in one of the crashes. Gets into an aerodynamic tuck. And is going to try and freewheel his way back onto the peloton. Looks like he'll be able to manage that.
Yes, and we can see the effort he was just making there. Losing 12 or 15 metres off the tail end of the bunch, the last rider, and with the gilet there, not aerodynamic whatsoever, and really making an effort, but couldn't close down the gap. And if it really goes fast out front, well then you could find yourself in difficulty. But we could see the race director's car came by quickly, and I think he will just get a little bit of drafting from that and make it onto the last man on the peloton.
Laurent Pichon had that spectacular crash on day one, did absolutely Trojan work for Française de Jeu yesterday. All came to naught. Nasser Bouhanni not quite able to get up and ahead of Mark Cavendish, and he was a little bit furious with himself, or at least with circumstances, immediately after the race, banging the handlebars as he went across the finish line. Bouhanni not quite able to convert the great work done by Française de Jeu on that occasion. But clearly he feels that he's got good speed in the legs, and if it all comes together, that perhaps he can challenge Cavendish in one of the flat days to come. But I don't think it's a day for either Bouhanni or Mark Cavendish today.
No, and flat days to come, they'll certainly run out of them also. But Bouhanni yesterday, he was impressive in the final 60-80 metres. He came from a long ways off and too far off, and that is the problem. The team rode well yesterday, but you need a guy to pilot it just to the final meters, and that's where Cavendish with Stegman's it was, you know, clockwork yesterday for them. And if Bohani had somebody, I think the way he finished in that final 50-60 meters yesterday, he was coming very fast. If he had a real lead out man with him in the final, then he would have been, you know, much closer to Cavendish. But that's all about experience as well. You have to know how to do it, but if you haven't got the rider, well, then it's difficult. You have to try and follow the sprinters, and yesterday there was a lot of movement there, a lot of riders trying to follow the other sprinters, and of course Cavendish, there's so many of the other sprinters want to have that wheel.
Question in on Twitter, the handle is @DQ Sport. Please send in your questions to that. This one comes from Stephen Todd. He wants to know the weight of a professional's bicycle. Well, it is, there is a number below which it cannot go. 6.8 kilograms is the weight of a professional's bike, and most of them are down very, very close, are right on 6.8 kilograms, because it's quite easy for the manufacturers these days to make a bike that's sufficiently strong enough that is quite a bit lighter. But that's the regulation. It's been the regulation for quite a number of years now, and no sign of it moving. 6.8 kilograms, around about 15 pounds, pretty much exactly 15 pounds. So that's a pretty light bicycle indeed. They can make them even lighter. Some riders, of course, if you're bigger, or if you're riding the Northern Classics, they might be a little bit sturdier, a little bit more material around the bottom bracket area and in the fork area. But most of these bikes are getting down pretty close to it. Bradley Wiggins looking relaxed. On the round chain rings these days, Shimano Dura Ace.
And his Dogma.
It's a pretty small looking small ring there though, isn't it? Looks like he's gone for an interesting selection of gears there. Was it a compact, a smaller 34 chain ring on the inside? There seemed to be a big contrast between the two of them. I can't imagine he's got a 50 on the outside, but perhaps they've managed to machine some sort of a compromise there. But that looked like a very small ring.
It certainly did look a small one. You know, when you look at the big ring, and the small one looked much more than when you would 39. So maybe for these climbs in the end, because there is some very big percentages, 18% and 14%, with the wet streets as well. The traction is not great, so it's possible that they have went for lower gears. Would not be surprised, and that did look something smaller than a 39 in a ring. Well,
they're well prepared. Aggregate of marginal gains and low lack of preparation from the Sky squad. Riders at the back of the group calling for bottles. Thomas Damousseau of the Team Argos Shimano team had his hand aloft to call for his team car. Meanwhile, Emanuele Sella has called for his car as he picks up a bottle on the Breakaway, toiling away and maintaining this advantage of 7 minutes, so doing a very solid job. Gianni Savia gives Sella his instructions, and he'll be very satisfied with the situation as it prevails at the moment, with the small Androni Giocattoli squad very much involved in the action and giving their sponsors plenty of airtime. Welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia 2013. 6 riders up front, maintaining this advantage of around about 7 minutes ahead of the group. Emanuele Sella of Androni Giocattoli is joined by Ioannis Tamaridis of Euskaltel, Martin Chalinghi of the Team Blanco squad, Dominic Rollin of Française de Jeu, Adam Hansen, the young Australian with Lotto Belisol, and Pim Lichtart of Vacances Soleil. And this is Ioannis Tamaridis. I say Adam Hansen, the young Adam Hansen, he certainly is at 31 years of age, but 5 of the 6 riders in this group are experienced old hands. And the only rider under the age of 30 is Pim Lichtart, actually, at 24 years of age. So all these riders have done a few laps. Interestingly enough, Tamaridis, the first Greek rider in the history of Giro d'Italia, not long at the World Tour level. First year, indeed, that he's been picked up by Euskaltel. Top track rider in his days, won the points and scratch races at the World Championships in 2005 and 2006. Respectively. And the weather forecast is it could go either way. Partly cloudy with possible rain. 23 degrees centigrade, so it's nice and warm for the riders out there, but
the picture tells it all.
Yes, clouds over the Abruzzo region as the Peloton winds its way from climb to climb, uphill, down dale. That's the nature of the day. Alex Jones on Twitter is suggesting that Shimano now do a 52-36 chain set. It could be that on Wigo's bike. Be a good selection if they did, but looked like it might have been a smaller one than that. Hard to tell. Pim Lichtart's left elbow. No difficulty identifying who that belongs to, and Lichtart will shrug that off. It's just another one of these little bumps and scrapes that these professional riders seem to accept as part of their normal daily working life. Cialinghi of the Blanco squad, now 35 years of age. He gets his instructions. He won the Tour of Belgium in 2006. Third in Paris-Roubaix in 2011. Very, very different terrain that he's facing today. Cialinghi is a vegetarian, actually, one of the few vegetarians in the pro peloton. It's not easy at all to maintain that kind of diet, although probably a little bit easier these days. Most of the teams, of course, have their own chefs, so if you've got particular dietary requirements, the chefs are on hand in the hotels at the end of each stage, and they look after the food for their individual riders. Kitchens seem, of most hotels, seem amenable to the idea that chefs come in and take over.
Well, certainly hasn't a problem with his appetite there. We could see him, he was stacking up on energy bars, having a banana, so he's getting plenty of food down him for the moment. And today is a day where you have to be careful that you keep on eating, because with the up and down all the time, sometimes it's difficult to eat regularly, and riders for maybe if you're under a little bit of pressure hanging in a group or in a breakaway, you forget and you don't do that regularly, well then you pay the price later.
That was Steph Clement for the Team Blanco squad at the back of the group, working his way back up through them. And as you say, in the up and down days, it's tougher to get when on the descents you can't really go for your pocket so much too easy, and on the climbs, if you're feeling the pinch a little bit, it's difficult too to get the food in, and you certainly don't want to be eating it when you're breathing.
No, and the wet conditions. Wet conditions doesn't help on the descents. We always see the riders. They can descend so well, and they can just eat and drink on the descents. But here you have to be careful, because as you go down, if a corner comes up quickly and it's a tighter one than you anticipate, well, you have to be ready for it. So a little bit more difficult today in those conditions. As we can see, the riders are descending with a bit of caution here. They know it's slippery, like they've seen Lichtart there go down, so they're just taking it easy. Interesting one back in the peloton now with Vinny Fantini. We see some of the riders peeling off here after being riding for quite a long time, and they are going to start weakening. Still 65 kilometres to go. Advantage 6 3/4 minutes. A nice advantage for the breakaway. If there's not a lot of teams want to take it up afterwards, this break could go a long, long ways today.
Well, the Vinny Fantini team are looking after Danilo DeLuca today, and we heard from him before the stage. I like this stage, he says. It is very much suited to my characteristics. The only unknown thing is that I don't really know how my shape is, because I haven't done too much racing before this Giro, so it will be a mystery to me, even if I know the roads well. We'll see. And another man, of course, from Vinny Fantini that is hoping for a good result. is Matteo Rabatini, as we see Emanuele Sella taking a different line to that of his breakaway companions as they sweep down this descent, and he acknowledges the fact that he got in the way a little bit. Let's hear from Rabatini now. Well, certainly the Strappi of Villobretri, 15 kilometers from the finish, will split the peloton. But the first of the hills comes already with 60 kilometers to go to the finish, and that's going to be tough. As far as I can see, the stage, it will be very hard. Lots of narrow roads, tough hills. It's going to be tricky to handle this stage. But if we work well, our team will try to get the win. Pippo Pozzato spent a lot of the time late on in yesterday's stage out the back of the group. Much more controlled and less panicked at the moment as he works his way back towards the tail end of the peloton, the man from Lampre. Pozzato now 116th overall, 28 minutes and 10 seconds in arrears, and perhaps a dark horse favourite to get in a break in the next week or so.
And we can see the Vini Fantini, two men very much on the rear of the peloton there just a moment ago. There was Rafael Adriano and Kiki, or Chichi as some people like to call him, Francesco, both of them in difficulty after riding for quite a bit on the front. So from Vini Fantini, they're starting to lose their troops very quickly, and as we did here there, 60 kilometers this way really starts to get difficult from here on in. So the breakaway now, they're going to be being left know by the director sportives that the chasing group is losing some of the riders. Will the other teams take it up? And if there's a moment where the teams are not interested in taking it up, especially Katusha as their race leader, if they kind of say, well, we are going to hold on to the jersey for another day, it's not going to change a lot for us, well then we could see a lot of tactical discussion back in the bunch, and this breakaway could pull quite a big advantage out during that time.
Yeah, how much motivation is there for Katusha knowing that they're pretty much guaranteed to lose it tomorrow to actually get involved in the chase? Maybe they would feel that, well, they've had a good old run at it. They've had 5 days. Well, there's your answer, really, because they're lined up behind Vini Fantini. They put a rider up there to aid with the chase. So, no, they want it for one more day, and that would gel with the words of Paolini after yesterday's stage. Pablo Lastras picking up the food for the Movistar squad. Going fairly comfortably for them. Inchausti, of course, sitting in a comfortable third place overall. He's unlikely to be in that position after the time trial tomorrow. But a man who's finished top 10 in the Vuelta a España so far in his career could conceivably be a man for the top 10 in the Giro this year. It's developing skills indeed, and no surprise that the camera is heading towards Danilo DeLuca again and again on this stage. Well, about a minute knocked off the lead. Has the hammer gone down in the peloton? Have they decided to rein it in a little bit, get it under a little bit more control? Questions: did the three riders on the wrong side of the dual carriageway make it back okay yesterday? Did they lose much time? As I understand, they did get in. Yeah, they did get back in. That was amusing, wasn't it? They spent kilometre after kilometre on the left-hand side of the dual carriageway.
Well, they just got back in time for that big pile up, and there was maybe some of them involved in that.
They should have waited, yeah.
Men in difficulty here.
That gives an indication that the peloton have stepped it up, and riders, these riders that were perhaps in the cars collecting, well, Nasser Bohani is one of them. Mega Pharma Quick Step also involved. No sign of Cavendish. Mark Cavendish will be distinctive today in his red points leaders jersey. Let's go through the classification orders. The sixth stage, of course, taken by Mark Cavendish from Elia Viviani of Cannondale and Matthew Harley-Goss of Rica Green Edge. And the overall GC not really affected by yesterday's events. Luca Paolini continues to hang on to his 17-second advantage over Rigoberto Uran of the Sky Pro Cycling squad. Benyata Inchausti, as I said, of Movistar sits at 25 seconds. Vincenzo Nibali at 31 seconds. Then Ryder Hejjedal and Bradley Wiggins a further 3 seconds in arrears. Caruso of Katusha, Enau of Sky, Sant'Ambrogio of Vini Fantini, Evans and Hessink round out the top 10. Hessink sitting in 12th place, actually. And in the points competition, it's Mark Cavendish. 58 points now with the 6-point advantage. Still a very, very narrow gap between himself and Elia Viviani, but he has bettered Viviani on a couple of occasions so far. Viviani ahead of Luca Paolini with a significant gap. Nasser Bouhanni sitting in 4th place in the points competition. And some speculation on Twitter that perhaps Luca Paolini might look at getting involved in the points competition, having scored some handy points in this first week. Perhaps there'll be opportunities for him later in the race on some of the rolling stages. Giovanni Visconti leads the mountains classification by 3 points from Pirazzi. Okay, 5:35 the advantage now for these 6 riders up front. The peloton are chasing. Just over 60 kilometres remain for the riders in the 7th stage of Giro d'Italia 2013. 6 riders out front. Their advantage has been pared now to just under 5.5 minutes. And the 6 riders up front maintaining their advantage as best they can. Emanuele Sella of Androni Giocattoli, Ioannis Tamaridas of Euskaltel, Martin Chalinghi of the Blanco squad, Dominique Rollin of Française de Jeu, Adam Hansen of Lotto Belisol and Pim Lichtart of Vacansoleil. Vini Fantini sit on the front en masse. They've been charged with the job of towing the peloton line, didn't manage to make it into that group, which was a disappointment to them, but they're working hard to try and keep that group in front in control. And another little stall as they go around that hairpin. Cannondale riders take into the pavement as the Sky team stay up front for Wiggins. Vini Fantini in yellow on the right-hand side, the BMC squad, the massed ranks of them on the left-hand side. Luca Paolini you can see in the Maglia Rosa just at the back of the Vini Fantini riders. Staying safe, staying up front, enjoying his time in the leader's jersey at 36 years of age. And I was just going through the different classifications just before we went to that last commercial break. Fabio Ru leads the young riders classification ahead of Rafael Maika of Team Saxo Tinkoff. Fabio Ru, of course, one of Vincenzo Nibali's Abel Gregario in the Astana team. He'll be looking to give him for him to give a hand when they get to the big hills. Steve Cummings right up front and protecting Cadel Evans. Cadel Evans just on Steve Cummings' left-hand shoulder in the red and black BMC colours. And it's not exactly the perfect terrain for Steve Cummings, but well, he's showing willing and doing lots of work for his team leader.
Yes, and doing it at the right time as well, because we're coming to this first mountain classification, Villa Manya. And we can see there a lot of the favourites starting to appear on the front of the bunch, because they want to, to be on the front, probably more for the descent than the climb, I would reckon, just to be in a good position. And we see Cummings there just arriving. We've talked about him a lot on the rear, but when the moment comes and in important times, he can get into the good position when he's really doing a good job for his leader, Cadel Evans, at the moment.
Yeah, Villa Manya is 2.7 kilometres. According to the road book, there are various different numbers coming out from various different sources about the lengths of these hills, the average percentages. But according to the official road book, the Villa Manya is a Cat 4, 2.7 kilometres, average 5.6%, maximum of 11%. So it's a little bit of a leg breaker.
And here the legs are breaking.
At the back of the group, riders are just not enjoying this, and the thoughts of a time trial tomorrow. You might think a time trial might sound like a bit of a day off. 54.8 kilometres for a lot of those riders. It seems, well, that's a relatively short ride, but they've got to do all the day's prep. They've got to do the warm-up, and for a lot of riders, just making it inside the time limit in a time trial is a really big ask. So it's no freebie. Here's one of the Française de Jeu riders hitting problems. Is it our man in the break, Rollin, or yeah, it is at the front of the race. Dominique Rollin of Canada is struggling to get his chain back on. He's decided to reach down and do it. He too looks like he's got a pretty small inside chain ring. no harm done, and he'll get back to the group without too much difficulty. So nice bit of work there, nice camera angle as we saw Dominic Rollin dealing with that issue. You can get your chain on with the front mech as well if you're adroit, and it's all about being calm and just doing it nice and gently.
Yes, and when people lose their chain, they just start pedaling like a coffee machine the way they turn, and that's the worst thing you can do, because you're going to tangle the chain everywhere. We could see Rollin there, he just knocked off the gas and just looked down to see and move the changer, of course, and get it back on. But he had a big problem because he had to get his hand down. It's something I wouldn't advise to the normal people, because if you're not good bike handling, you get your finger caught between the chain and the chainring, well then it can be a sore thing.
It certainly can. It's an easy thing to happen, and when you're not looking out front as well, all sorts of hazards can suddenly appear. And it's physically not easy, unless of course you've got wonderful core fitness, fantastic flexibility. All of these pro riders, all-round athletes in every sense of the word. Rollin has a little conversation with the Française de Jeu team car, as if to say, do I need to make an adjustment? It's amazing how many riders are suffering these sort of difficulties that we've seen already. I suppose when you're going from big ring to small ring, big ring to small ring, and indeed if a lot of the riders are using a much smaller inside chain ring, then the transfer from the big ring to the small ring can lead to the chain coming off, and vice versa, going back up again. It's a bit more of an ask for the front derailleur.
And the gap is coming down. You can see 419 at the moment. It's come down quite a lot in the last 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers. So the difficult terrain, it's having an effect on the breakaway, or maybe that back in the peloton they've just upped the pace a little bit more as they get on to the more difficult and the first climb of the day. We could see there front of the bunch there was a lot of action, so I think the pace probably has come up quite a bit, and that's the reason our 6 leaders out in front are losing a bit of time.
Hugh Reinhold is asking on Twitter, @DQ Sport is the handle, why do road bikes have only 2 chain rings instead of 3 as mountain bikes do? Would have thought the more choice the better.
Well, I think we would see more of what we see just a moment ago with Rollin from the Française de Jeu team. With the 3 rings, it's much more easy to drop a chain, because when you're going from the big ring to the middle ring, if you have the 3 rings, well then it can just go totally down and drop off. And from my experience with the 3 rings, it's not as easy to make the change. You drop your chain much more easily, and also they don't need it a lot. It's a rare occasion where there's really steep percentages in the big tours, but that's only maybe 1 or 2 days. In the Tour of Italy we've had it, I suppose, in the Tour of Spain the last number of years, but in the Tour of France you don't need that really low gearing, so there's not a need for triple chain rings.
Katusha in red playing a watching brief behind Vinny Fantini as they pile on the power to try and close down. Riders out there now for 3 hours, toiling in the sunshine for the most part. Little flurries of rain here and there, and they're quick to get the jackets on when the rain came, but luckily it cleared up again. Most of the riders, I think, will probably have put the jacket in their pocket, because it could well be needed again before the end of this stage. What speeds do the riders get going down a descent, asks Corey Southern. Well, I suppose on these winding, difficult technical descents, they're not going to get up much more than 80 kilometers an hour, but you've seen quite a bit higher than that in your career, Sean.
Yes, so certainly when you get the big long descents where you have 20-25 kilometers descents, and the real good descents, which you do not have the hairpins and the switchbacks, well then you can go straight through a lot of the bends, and the road is fully closed. That is the important thing. Like in the Tour of France, it's 100% closed, and you're confident of that, so you can really go downhill and use all of the road, and that is so important. But the guys get well over 100k an hour a lot of occasions.
What's your record?
124.
124 kilometers an hour on a bicycle. All right. What hill was that?
Duplen, outside Morzine. We went through Morzine and then just made the climb to Duplen, and it's a very, very fast descent. It's amazingly, and the corners you can go straight through, as I said, when you're in a race on full road closure. And also if you have a good motorbike outrider, well that's very important, because he can show you can see from the line he's going into the corners, the way he's braking, and that is a huge advantage as well. You gain a couple of kilometers an hour very quickly there.
Vinny Fantini on the front. Will Vinny Fantini ever get an invite to the Tour de France? Asks Jimmy d'Italia. I don't think it's something that's atop of their agenda. They're not a wildcard pick for this year's Tour de France. I'm not sure they're that concerned about it. Certainly, if they had to pick between the Tour de France and Giro d'Italia, I'm pretty confident that the Giro is the race that they absolutely, definitely have to be in, and it's more important to them. So to Androni Giocattoli. Andrew Stewart says a useful chain catcher on the frame would solve a lot of the chain slip problems. Absolutely. Most of the pros have chain catchers because, as I said earlier, they've no problem making the weight, getting the bike to 6.8 kilograms. So sometimes they actually need to add a little bit of ballast, and chain catcher is a useful little addition. So 3:46 now. The advantage is shrinking with every passing kilometre. 6 riders still up front. Welcome back. Just under 54 kilometres left of the 177 kilometres in stage 7 of Giro d'Italia, with 6 riders up front tapping out a rhythm and desperately trying to hold off the peloton, which, as you can see on the right hand side of the screen, is being led by Vinny Fantini. And they've managed to slice the advantage down from 7 minutes to just under 4 between these 6 riders up front. And that peloton, Emanuele Sella of Androni Giocattoli is in the lead group, as is Ioannis Tamaridis of Euskaltel, Martin Cialinghi of Blanco, Dominic Rollin of Française de Jeu, Adam Hansen of the Lotto Belisol squad, and Pim Lichtart of Vacances Soleil. Plenty of cheering, as you might imagine, for Vincenzo Nibali, the man from Sicily, who has his fans throughout Italy. Man they call the Shark, and it's a shark tooth profile today. And the technical roads have already caught out Lichtart. Six riders out front. Cialinghi for the Blanco team makes way as the riders work their way past Manya, coming close to this first categorized climb of the day. 4 climbs for the riders to negotiate. Manya, as I said, 2.7 kilometers at 5.6% average and maximum of 11%. Heightened anticipation in the village as the riders make their way here very shortly, and no doubt that the mountains classification points are going to go to these, well, almost cast iron certainty at this point that they're going to go to the leaders up front. Ioannis Tamaridis perhaps can garner a few points, and that would probably be a relief of sorts to Giovanni Visconti, who, as I said, has a 3-point advantage over Perazzi of Bardiani. And Chalapud of the Colombian squad, a couple of further points in arrears. Willem Wouters also on 9 points. It's very much the early days of the King of the Mountains competition. Visconti, though, perhaps believes that he can be a factor if he can get into another breakaway a little bit later in the race and perhaps hoover up some points. Lichtart sitting on the back, missing a turn here. He's obviously not enjoying the gradient. Had a little bit of a chase back after his crash. Took him a while to get a bike. And just a little gap developing between himself and the other 5 riders as Sella moves across smoothly, without any difficulty, onto the wheel of Adam Hansen. Rollin then in turn takes up Sella's wheel, and these 5 riders moving smoothly in unison and continuing to do turns up the hill as Lichtart struggles. Sella, the diminutive figure, at home in these hills. Rollin, a much taller, more powerful figure. And the whole Vinny Fantini team pretty much on the front, working hard. Sky noticeable there, just behind Vinny Fantini, and Colombian riders feeling the pinch. You might expect that the Colombians would be enjoying it when the road goes upwards. But Tare Martinez not enjoying that at all. Sella strikes out to take the mountain points. Establishes a little bit of a gap, has a little bit of a look over his shoulder, but no doubt that Emanuele Sella is going to take the points at the first King of the Mountains of the day. And Tamarides next over the line, takes the 2 points. And Hansen, yeah, Adam Hansen in third place for the Lotto Belisol squad.
So first points for Sella in the mountain classification. At the moment he hasn't picked up any points up to this point, but again, you know, he's one of these riders who we'll see more in the breakaways as we get into the more mountain stages. So he is possibly a candidate for the mountain classification at the end of this race. He's a very good climber and a very aggressive rider. I think we will definitely see more of him in breakaways later in this race.
Tough day for the riders as we get the overhead shot of Emanuele Sella taking the points ahead of Tamarides and Hansen. Chilinghi next up. A couple of riders that have been suffering a bit. I made mention of Cataldo, who's been sick and will hope to recover. This, of course, the stage through his home region. He'd like to perhaps do something a little bit later on in the stage. Taylor Finney, as we saw yesterday, all smiles at the back of the peloton, using it as best he could as a recovery day. He'll have rendezvous with the time trial tomorrow. Whether the time trial will suit him with that big ramp towards the finish remains to be seen. But the man who was second in last year's World Time Trial Championships, finished fourth in the Olympic time trial to Bradley Wiggins, would ordinarily be expected to be able to produce a result. But of course he's suffering with hay fever. Not indeed sure if it's not a full-blown fever. He's been running a bit of a temperature and it's been tough for him for the last few days, so he's hoping to recover. I understand that Paolo Tirolongo of Astana is also struggling with a knee injury, and that'll be a bit of concern as well for Nibali, because Tirolongo is going to be a very, very important rider when they come to the big mountains. Speaking of the big mountains, the big stages to come. We've had just about a week of racing at this point, and first big rendezvous for the leading contenders. Bottles are jettison on the left-hand side is tomorrow, the individual time trial. From Gabice Mare to Saltara, 54.8 kilometers, as I say. And that will completely rejig the overall classification, make a complete difference, and then we'll know whether Bradley Wiggins has genuine overall ambitions. He absolutely must put some time into the riders tomorrow. That is the expectation. Vincenzo Nibali says that he'll hope to limit his losses as best he can. Perhaps that finishing ramp might be a little bit in his favour and might reduce the amount of time that he loses. Then after that, the next big mountain stage is next Tuesday, 14th, 167 kilometers. They're in the Dolomites for one day, finishing at Alto Piano del Montasio. And then a couple of tough days in a row in the Alps tomorrow week and the day after, Saturday the 18th and Sunday 19th. 156 kilometers and 150 kilometers respectively from Bardonecchia and the Galibier stage then on the Sunday, as the Giro d'Italia ventures into France briefly and up the tough side of the Galibier, and that is going to be a really, really tough day for the riders. They've got a few days where they'll hope to try and recover as best they can, a couple of medium mountain stages and a couple of stages for the sprinters before they head to the next individual time trial, which is a climb, as we see the bunch winding their way around this hairpin. And it's almost like the differential on a car, isn't it? The riders on the inside slow to a crawl. The riders on the outside are able to go quite a lot quicker, but have to go quite a lot further, and the end up means that they're all pretty much in the same position. Everybody nice and careful through there. Yeah, and after that individual time trial on Thursday, 23rd, you've got two absolute doozies in the mountains. The third last and second last stages of the race on Friday 24th and Saturday 25th in the Dolomites. 138 kilometers on the first day, relatively short stage to Val Martello, includes climbs of the Stelvio and Gavia. And the Stelvio will be the Cima Coppi, the highest point of the Giro d'Italia. An important prize on offer there, but also important mountain moments for the overall contenders. And then that stage on the Saturday, second last stage, 202 kilometres, including Trecime Lavaredo. 2 days in the Dolomites. Immediately after that second individual time trial, this is no gimme. It's going to be a really, really tough ask for whichever rider manages to emerge at the head of the general classification and take victory in the Giro d'Italia of 2013. Okay, Vinny Fantini still pushing hard. Now just over 3 minutes between them and the 6 up front. Welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia, and here's the aftermath of a fall involving Zardini of Bardiari and Spina Navarro of the Colombia squad. So these riders on stage 7, Eduardo Zardini of Bardiani Valvoli CSF Inox manages to get going again after this crash, as we get sight of the problem and just the aftermath as these two riders come to grief. Luckily no other riders involved in that. And that's just made a tough day even tougher for those two riders as they'll try and chase back on. And we saw that Ospina was struggling a little bit at the back of the group as it was. Just a few national champion of Colombia a few years ago, so no mean rider. You can be pretty sure that's not an easy national championship to win, but this is first appearance at the Giro d'Italia, baptism of fire. He's in the wars. As meanwhile up front, Emanuele Sella continues to set the tempo on the front, finding these climbs a little bit easier perhaps than those bigger men around him. Although interesting that he's kind of hauling a pretty big gear. Seems to be comfortable sitting outside of the or standing out of the saddle as long as possible. Cilingi by contrast. Martin Cilingi sitting and tapping out a rhythm on a smaller gear, and you might have expected that the smaller man Sella on the front would be on the bigger gear. He goes to a smaller gear there and hands it up to someone else to take up the pace. Bradley Wiggins, third in line of those Sky Riders on the right hand side in the black and blue outfits. Vinny Fantini in the fluoro yellow. Massed ranks the whole team on the front. One of their Gregario arrives on the front to give fresh supplies. Paolini grinding a gear, looks relatively relaxed. He's able to go to his pockets without any difficulty. Pozzovivo making his way up on the right hand side. We heard from a little earlier, the man from AG2R. And there's the indication. Look at the road sign on the right hand side. It's 10% in this section, and if you don't believe it's a tough hill from looking at the riders' faces, well, that road sign will tell you this is tough, and this will be making a lot of legs hurt at the back of the peloton, because there's just hill after hill after hill that is producing these sort of statistics. There are only 4 classified climbs on this route, remember. Highest category of those is, well, there's a couple of third cats, a couple of fourth cats in total, but this is a tough day out, make no mistake. Titsu of Sky Pro Cycling with a natty pair of blue shoes. Looking after, as ever, Bradley Wiggins. And they're starting to feel it amongst the Vinny Fantini team. Danilo DeLuca lurking at the back of this group of Vinny Fantini riders is the rider that you would expect to come up with a big result towards the end, although they've got a couple of other cards to play. Sean, any I mean, this is a potential banana skin stage for the general classification riders, as we see the Colombian rider making it back into the peloton. Amiga Pharma Quick-Step are going back en masse there, and that's the reason. Mark Cavendish on the right hand side in the points leader's jersey. Well, no surprise that he's really struggling. It's going to be a long day for him now. Well, he's about 26-27 miles from the finish, with plenty of other little leg breaking climbs, so he'll have to work a little bit. It's not a case of coasting to the finish from here. No, it's certainly not, because with this rain there's no coast to the finish here, but we can see there's a lot of Omega Pharma here in this group. There's what, 3-4 guys with Mark Cavendish, and I'm sure they will pick up a lot of other riders as we just go further up here, but they're going to have to, to get themselves organised, because with this real difficult terrain, they're going to have to climb the hills at a good tempo, then the descents make it really good, and any little bit of flat section, which is little in this stage today, really push on and limit the losses, because they're going to be concerned about the time delay. Yeah, just at the back of that group, the aforementioned Taylor Finney has also slotted in, and he'll take advantage of the work from Omega Pharma Quickstep. Of course, did such great work yesterday for Cavendish to deliver him to the finish line, and his status as the world's fastest sprinter earns him the respect of his team, who'll come back and try and pace him to the finish as best they can. So there's no rest for the wicked. It's not going to be a day for sprinting for Omega Pharma Quickstep. That doesn't mean it's a day without work.
And we can see that so many riders starting to lose contact as we go on up the climb here. I think they will you know, pick up a lot of riders who will just be the victim of the rear door of the peloton, and it's opening and opening wider all the time as we go further up, and as we go further into this stage we will see, you know, the riders will start to peel off the rear end, and there will be quite a big group. We can see, you know, at the moment there's a long line there at the end of the bunch. You know, that will, the bus will grow, and the bus means like the group behind that are just riding to get inside the time limit, and you know, ride at a good pace on the climbs, but not anything like what's seen here in the front of the peloton, because they cannot do that. So when you slow down by, you know, a kilometre an hour, it means a lot to everybody. Everybody can stay in there, but you know, you keep a big group of riders together, and you have that in all the big tours. When you get into the mountain stages, the sprinters and non-climbers, they always just form this group of riders back the road.
Strength in numbers, as we saw Nathan Haas got a shot of the man from Garmin Sharp. His riders at the back of the peloton scramble to get back involved. The road flattens out a little bit. They get a little bit of relief from the gradient. Still got to work to get back into contention. The riders up front now, their advantage has been pared to just 2 3/4 minutes. Andy Pollard wants to know if the predominantly black sky clothing causes overheating, or does it radiate heat better? Black is a more popular colour in the last couple of years. For a few years, half the jerseys in the bunch were all white. And then it became black. It used to be said that black absorbed the heat, didn't radiate it back, and I'm not so sure. You can be pretty sure that some Buffon at the Sky team has got a spreadsheet comparison analysis done of some sort, and concluded that really it's not all that relevant, not compared to the advantage of being able to be seen on television, of course. In the heart of the peloton, is there much talking between teams, or is the ride quite silent and kept to own team talking in headsets? There'd be a good bit of chat in there, would there?
Yes, well, of course, you know, when you talk into your headset or your mic to the team director, you have to push the button. And we see the riders, when, you know, they catch their jersey and they just start to push on the button when they're in conversation with their team director. But when the riders are just riding along together on a flat road, and you know, they're doing a casual pace, well, then there's a lot of banter goes on. But a stage like today, there's not going to be a lot of time for that, especially from here on in this final 60 kilometres. It's just, you know, up, down all the time, so that will be out for today.
Speed Metal Cycling pointing out that not all Team Columbia guys are climbers. A few of them came from the track, and indeed track is very popular in Colombia, I do know that. Avila, Marentes and Ospina are rouleurs. Duque is a sprinter. Duque, yeah, we mentioned him yesterday, certainly has got a good turn of speed at the end of a stage, although it's tough to come out of Colombia without being able to get over the hills a little bit with reasonable facility. Here we head through Ripa Teatina. 46 kilometers left, a little bit less than that for the riders. This is the home of the family of the great Rocky Marciano, world boxing champion, heavyweight champion from 52 to 1956. Only rider, boxer indeed, to have retired undefeated. Another Rocky comes from this neck of the woods, the Australian boxer Rocky Mattioli, who was born here in 1997. Dominic Rollin rolls his way back into the group, the Canadian rider, riding with Française de Jeu. Canadian national road race champion in 2006. And he's been with Française de Jeu. This is now his third season with the French squad. Slots back into the line. Sella might take a break, miss a turn. He's done lots of work on the climb, and this not really his perfect terrain. He'll just take a little bit of a breather and then get back into the group, back into the line and do his bit. Chris Both wants to know who's the oldest rider in the Giro Peloton. That's Stefano Garzelli at 39 years and some days. I have it here somewhere, but Garzelli is a little bit older than Danilo Honda, also 39 years of age. So two 39-year-olds in there, a bunch of 37-year-olds. Our race leader, Luca Paolini, a relatively spry stripling of just 36. And in his debut Giro d'Italia.
We've just seen Garzelli there. He's been riding on the front of the group with his teammates from Vini Fantini. So he's not the man for they're going to have a go with in the stage end today. It looks like that DeLuca probably is the one, because when you see a rider riding at this moment, well, then he's going to pay for that effort, and he has been, giving quite a lot of effort on the front of the bunch there. Stefano Garzelli, a past winner of Giro, and I think twice winner of the mountain classification in the Vuelta, or in the Giro.
Carlos Betancourt, Colombian, who certainly does like going up hills, riding with the AG2R squad. Very evident there. Also just on his wheel, the Franco Pelazzotti, Italian national road race champion, racing with Androni Giocattoli. And working his way smoothly up through the group as Pim Lichtart is at the back of the group and feeling the effects of the distance and the efforts of the climbs, and indeed perhaps feeling a little bit of pain from his crash, making his way a lot more gingerly through the bends than he...
feeling the fear.
Someone on Twitter wants to know if you've ever had to get off and walk up a hill.
Yes, many of the time. In the Tour of Flanders in my career, I was must be 12, 13 times in the race, but I think I made it on 4 occasions on the bike. So there is the classics, Tour of Flanders one, but also we see in the big tours sometimes when it's real wet conditions, and if you start further back into the peloton when it slows down, sometimes you have to walk a bit before you can get moving again. There, of course, you have the spectators that will always give you a hand to get you rolling and get back on your bike.
Belletti at the back for AG2R, at the front, relatively organised still by Vini Fantini, as the leading contenders teams try to keep their riders out of trouble. Now just 2.5 minutes to the leaders up front. Welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia 2013. The leading 6 riders are on the second classified hill of the day. It's in Chieti, 1.1 kilometers, an average gradient of leg braking 11.5%, a maximum of 19% getting up here. So this is going to be a real tough test for the riders. The rose petals thrown under the wheels. At least they tried to throw them under the wheels, went over the wheel of the race director's car. And these 6 riders up front doing a great job managing to hang out front as long as they are. Looks like they'll get to contest this second classified hill of the day, which has been a very popular finish in Tirreno Adriatico over the years. We're very much in Tirreno territory here. And Chieti has played host to stage finishes of Tirreno. This time, though, at the end of this hill, they'll have to go a further 40 kilometers. Adam Hansen of Australia looking very, very comfortable and able to give a bit of a turn for Emanuele Sella. Sella is the man that is taking responsibility for setting the pace. Quick reminder of the riders in there. Emanuele Sella, as I say, Ioannis Tamaridis, Chalingi, Rollin, Hansen and Pim Lichtart. Sella sets the pace and makes the other riders behind him grimace a little bit, and has this distinctive style. Like so many climbers, he's comfortable with staying out of the saddle for sustained periods of time. Other bigger riders have to sit in the saddle and slog away.
Not surprising he's causing difficulty for the other ones. When you see Rollin here, you see Talangi, you see Hansen, all big riders. Compared to Sella, there's a big difference in weight there, and when you get in the big steep, in the steeper climbs, well, you kind of extra kilos, it's really difficult, and it tells immediately.
Apparently the new Rafa gear that the Sky team are using these days, Sky jersey is now made of a new material which negates the effect of heat absorption. Thus they're able to use more black this year. Thanks for that, Mike Hughes. None more black used to be the phrase, and now it's the opposite. Vinny Fantini working hard for Danilo DeLuca. DeLuca looking comfortable, well, relatively comfortable in as much as anyone does. The race leader, overall race leader, Luca Paolini, resplendent in the Maglia Rosa, and just over his right shoulder we got a shot of Giovanni Visconti in the blue jersey of the here we go, attacks coming from Vinny Fantini. 2:25 the gap to the riders up front, as Fabio Tabora, who's been on the attack so far in this race on a few occasions, is local to the region. Clearly no lack of motivation from him. And Fabio Tabora of Vinny Fantini sitting just over 37 minutes down on overall classification, so he's not a danger to the other riders. May perhaps be interested in thinking about taking some points at the top of the hill. This second category climb, well, of course there's no points on offer. 6 riders up front, they'll have mopped up all the points. Meanwhile, riders assembling. Steve Cummings, Robbie Hunter, who's involved in an interesting altercation at the end of yesterday's stage. He's gone backwards here. He's done well probably to last this long. This not his terrain, not his stage today, not where he would be expected to shine. But up front, Fabio Tabora sets his jaw, focuses, concentrates, and drinks in the pain as the Sky team go to the front and set the tempo. Vinny Fantini obviously not interested in chasing.
Well, they're just going to employ another tactic now, try and put a man up the road as they've done here, and get the other teams to start working on the front, and we can see Sky are the ones who take it up. I think Vinny Fantini, they have got into position now just under 2 minutes with 39 kilometers to go. They feel the best way is try and make the race difficult now, and it is surely the way to do it, because for the likes of DeLuca, who probably is their main target today, their main car today, I think they just want to open up the race a bit and make it as difficult and aggressive as from here as possible.
Yeah, and a few riders in the Sky team struggling a little bit. We saw Zandia going south. And
Kettle Evans here moving up with a teammate, as we can see, quite a bit off for some reason.
Yeah, needs to move up quickly. Danny Pate is going backwards for Sky, and Cadell Evans, perhaps he was a little bit caught out. Was he back at his car? Was he collecting a drink or whatever? It's hard to imagine that was happening, but he's having to race across gaps left, right and centre, so a little bit of a worrying moment, but it looked as if he was just about to make it up onto the shoulder of rider Hejidal, the reigning champion, wearing number 1 from Garmin Sharp. Sitsu setting the pace, and Sky Riders suffering. Iran, the man second on GC. What was the problem there for Iran? He just had his foot out of the pedals. Doesn't seem to be any panic there. He's happy enough to put a bottle in his jersey. So much speculation about Rigoberto Urán in recent days. Will he be with the Sky Pro Cycling squad next year? At the moment, he is very much an important part of Bradley Wiggins' backup team. He's ahead of Wiggins on general classification at the moment. That'll all change tomorrow in the time trial. Emanuele Sella continues to winch this big gear up this incredibly tight, and he just got shoved in on the left-hand side, I think. Oh, and hits the ground, so that's an annoying moment for Rigoberto Urán, and that these guys have very, very low fat content, so I can tell you that's going to hurt. He'll have a bruise at the very least of it. Just a little spill, no serious harm done, but not an ideal situation.
No, and just a slope in front of him. The rider in front of him seemed to slow or almost to a standstill, and he didn't react immediately, and just seemed just couldn't get his leg out of the pedal quick enough and just fell over.
So now, as they crest the rise at the top of this summit of Chieti, it's Emanuele Sella that leads them over the top. Sella takes the points for the second hill of the day, takes 5 points on offer. That's 8 points so far that he scored in this competition. He vaults up to 5th in it for what it's worth, and another opportunity if they hang on for the next one for another 5 points. So Sella is putting himself into contention. Indeed, he could well move ahead of Visconti. If they make it through to the next hill and Sella takes the points, he'd be level with Visconti on the top of the hill. Then I think it goes down to GC. I'll have to check on that, but I believe could well be the amount of hills that they've led over the top of. After that, their GC position. But an opportunity for Emanuele Sella to move into the jersey if this group can hang on out front, but that gap is closing down quickly. Steady tempo being set on the front, and no doubt Siutsu and co will be made aware of the fact that Rigoberto Urán is behind and chasing after that little issue. Team Blanco squad of Robert Hessink moved to the front. Perhaps not really concerned with what Martin Cilingi is doing up front. They're thinking now about the race behind. That's Garate doing the work. Let's get another sight of this. Plenty of riders stopped behind, and Urán just starting to get going. How did that happen? Just didn't have the momentum, ended up riding into his teammate.
Yes, and was that Wiggins? It looked like Wiggins there just in front of him, and he had to slope totally to a standstill and just fell over.
Punk. Let's hope no serious harm done. 2 minutes in arrears now, so they've shaved another half a minute off their advantage on that one climb alone. So now with 37 kilometres to go, and for the leaders up front, they're about a kilometre away, or ahead I should say. 20 kilometres to go at the top of the next hill. So around about 18k to the top of the next hill, which is a 3.3 kilometre ascent of Santa Maria de Cryptis. So there's a confirmation of that mountain sprint. Sella, Hansen and Rollin. Welcome back. 6 riders up front on stage 7 of Giro d'Italia as they make their way towards the finish in Pescara. There are, as I say, 6 riders now. Their advantage has been pared back from a maximum of just over 7 minutes down to 2 minutes. Emanuele Sella has been leading this group up the hills. He's also leading them on the descents. He's showing plenty of motivation to try and hang on as long as he can out front. He's vaulted himself into contention for the mountains classification jersey. Sella of Androni Giocattoli. Ioannis Tamarides is there also for Euskaltel. The man second in line here for Lotto Belisol is Adam Hansen. For Française de Jeux, Dominic Rollin. Martin Cilingi in the distinctive black, white and blue colours of Blanco. And Pim Lichtart at the back, as he has been for quite some time, for the Vacon Soleil team. Up front, Fabio Tabora of Vini Fantini Sella Italia has struck out ahead of the bunch. So now Tabora is closing the gap to the group up front. The Maglia Rosa of Luca Paolini is safely ensconced in this dwindling, still large group, which are chasing the 6 riders up front. At the back of the group, Navardaskus of the Garmin Sharp team, and already 6 riders are on the next leg-breaking ascent, and there are so many of them.
This one not accounting for the GPM classement. There is an intermediate sprint here. Chieti Trecale, so another difficult climb of about kilometre and a half, 2 kilometres, as we can see here. And this group, the breakaway, is really splitting up, as we see Hansen pushing on here, and this is really going to explode the breakaway of 6 men.
Yeah, 2 intermediate sprints in each road stage of Giro d'Italia, and they're offering time bonuses as well. But this one, very unusually, is on a really tough climb. It's just over a climb, 1.1 kilometres, 11.5% the average gradient, so it's definitely not the sort of thing that would suit the likes of Cam Wurf, who's currently leading the intermediate sprints competition after all his time out front in the first stage, and indeed yesterday's stage. He has the advantage in that competition, but he's not going to feature in this one, as we see Hansen and Sella go out front of their breakaway companions. They've struck on, and it looks like they've moved away, and what a massive contrast in styles, as Hansen, huge figure, monstering that bike, huge thighs, developing massive power. Sella, his power to weight ratio is derived by having a very low weight, and he's really grimacing because Hansen looks like he's got great form indeed. Meanwhile, Tabora hasn't really opened any significant gap on the group behind. He's still continuing to persevere, but they're lurking ominously. Well, it can't be more than 40-50 meters behind. And climbing all over the bike there, he's struggling but pushing hard over the top of this little leg breaker. 35 kilometers to go, and as I say, an average gradient of 11%, and there'll be little sections that are higher than that. And don't discount Sella, because he rides that slightly bigger gear. Hansen goes to the front. He's interested in the intermediate sprint points, I think, and they go toe to toe. And that's one of the more unusual intermediate sprint points you're going to see. Road continues to rise after it as they go through that left-hand hairpin. Hansen goes for a much lower gear and tries to get a little bit relief from his gears. Oh, and that's all you need to know about how tough this hill is. It was Pavel Brut of Katusha. Tabora, as I say, local to the region. And while Hansen is doing so well up front, a couple of his teammates not enjoying it so much. This Lars back. He'll just grind his way over the top of this hill and try and find a group. Try and find solace in the company of others at some stage. His chances of getting back into this one looking increasingly unlikely. At the start of the stage, Dan Lloyd, who does the interviews at the end, rode the last 30 kilometers, and he reckons that there could be a group of as many as 20 or 30 that could sprint it out for the finish. Definitely not one for the big gallopers, but it could be a reasonable sized group. Would you concur with that, Sean?
Well, it looks like that the group is going to be getting small as we go on, and again, it all depends. If there's somebody here who go in the attack in the final 25 kilometers, well, then it will really explode and break up the main peloton, and I would not be surprised if it was a group of 30, 35 riders, because when you look at what's left, it's a difficult terrain, and we can see there, the group is getting small. The main group of big favourites is getting smaller every time we just go up one of these climbs.
Tabora pushing hard. He's going to get over the top of this this little hill, and I think he's certainly going to be out front of the group. Will he be able to drag out a little bit of more time on the descent? That's the question. Tabora gets a little bit of relief from the gradient. Meanwhile, Sietsu sets the pace on the front, and no sign of Wiggins in there. So Wiggins it was with Rigoberto Urán. Had that little issue. Urán fell over. Wiggins, you would have expected, would have made it up towards the front. So is this a little bit of another worrying moment for Bradley Wiggins? He's had one or two of them so far in this race. Where is Bradley Wiggins? We know where Cone de Court is of Arga Shimano. He's going out the back. His teammate Damuso is in there as one of the Saxo Tinkoff riders. Finds himself out of the saddle and off the bike.
Sunderland from Saxo having a bit of a walk there, the final couple of metres.
Little promenade. Not a planned one. Sella and Hansen out front have moved clear of their four breakaway companions who are somewhere in no man's land at the moment. And there was no sign of them when they went over the top, so it's going to be tough for those four guys to connect back up with Hansen and Sella up front. Hansen takes the opportunity for a quick drink as they settle into this descent. Groups all over the road. These riders are struggling and no longer in contention for stage honours. A couple of Garmin Sharp riders. Nathan Haas is amongst them.
Steve Cummins, Matty Goss in there, so a group, quite a big group, just waiting for the bus to come up from the rear.
Robbie Hunter, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, he's there. And that group are completely out of contention. Meanwhile, plenty of racing going on up front, and this looks like Luca Paolini that's not enjoying things. He's got a couple of Katusha riders for company. You just see him in the Maglia Rosa to the right of that Astana rider. Hansen, Sella and Pim Lichtart is the confirmation over the top of the intermediate sprint.
Two leaders are really putting up a big fight here. You know, they're holding the advantage quite well the last number of kilometres, considering the very difficult terrain. Although in the peloton they're just, you know, setting a pace there. We can see some of the Sky riders just on the front, keeping it at a good pace that prevent anybody from, you know, going in the attack. But it's not going to be long until somebody have to go in the attack, because if you're thinking of a stage victory here, well, then you have to start, you know, working at the moment, and not be surprised DeLuca in the next opportunity. I think we'll see him going in the attack and trying to pull ahead and get away in a group, because time is running out, and if he waits for too long, well, then he's going to have difficulty. The closer he gets to the finish in that final 10 kilometres is always a bit more difficult, because it gets more aggressive and more nervous. So get away further out is probably his best opportunity.
Fabio Tabora up front ahead of the peloton. But these are the riders out front of the race. Sella and Hansen working hard. Sella very impressive through the hairpins, clearly full of motivation and full of confidence on this descent. You might be surprised with the size of him that he'd be such a good descender. Adam Hansen steals a little look across at the camera motorbike. And Tabora continuing to persevere in between. No sign of the other breakaway riders, Tamarides, Chilenge, Rollin and Lichtart. Looks like one rider is going to make it across to them. It could be Rollin. Where's that Chilenge? Oh, and a crash, and Sella gets it wrong. We saw him, and it's gone. Well, look at that. It's started to rain, and Sella gets it all wrong. And his chain is off, and quickly gets back into it. Adam Hansen is away and in the distance, and this is the problem with these changing weather conditions. It can change in a heartbeat and catch a rider out so quickly, and we saw the levels of commitment that Emanuele Sella was putting in. The little sprinkling of rain on the camera lens of the motorbike, and Tabora will be aware of that. He'll be getting the same sprinkle on his sunglasses, and he'll be just a little bit more cautious through these hairpins than perhaps he was a few moments ago. Having said that, look at the levels of commitment as he races through these hairpins, and his effort to stay ahead of the bunch and chase down Emanuele Sella and Adam Hansen up front. But Sella getting it all wrong, luckily without any serious harm. But that just shows you how treacherous these roads can be, especially in changing weather conditions.
Yes, and there are also some of the riders from the breakaway, I think, are still in there. Dominic Rollin, we could see him there. I think he is chasing down, but I think Sella was losing a bit of ground on Adam Hansen, maybe in the straights, and just you know, really taking a risk, trying to get back up into the wheel, and down he goes. And
well, Hansen's decided that he needs Sella. He's looking over his shoulder. And the question is, do I persevere, do I press on, or do I wait for Sella? Well, Sella was very useful in terms of the pace he was able to set on the hills, but of course there's not really a massive benefit in terms of slipstreaming effect from Sella on the hills. There wouldn't be even on the flat. He's so much smaller than Hansen. Hansen's calling the car ahead. Is he looking for a little bit of advice from his team car? I suspect he needs to know what to do. They're on the radio. Meanwhile, Tabora is trying to close down the advantage of these two riders up front. There's at least three, possibly four riders in between as well. And Tabora looks
as if... This is the corner.
And this is the corner that Emanuele Sella came to grief, and Vinny Fantini.
And how many more will come to grief here, because this is...
oh, and look at that. He's scrabbling for traction, and loads of wheel spin as he gets on the gear. And look, Sella was ahead. Oh, and he almost saved it. He got on the back brake, but just couldn't get it sideways for long enough. And I mean, that just shows you how much grip there isn't there.
Well, he went too heavy on the handbrake. He just, didn't leave it go, and sliding the back, he should have, left the brake go a little bit, his rear brake, and he might have got straight, but totally blocked up and locked the rear brake, and there was no way he was going to hold upright.
There's only two thin bits of rubber. The old cadence braking is not that easy. But, well, a great effort by Sella to try and stay upright. He got up as quickly as possible, but the spectator coming to his aid on the floor is quick. He didn't have the high grip runners on. And Hansen has once again been joined by Emanuele Sella, who takes a little gulp of energy drink. Well deserved at this point. So Lichtart, Cilingi and Rollin are chasing. And so we've lost Tamarides of Euskaltel. Is he ahead or is he behind? Meanwhile, Tabora has been through that corner that Sella, and the bunch have receded in the distance, so Tabora has managed to open up a bit of an advantage.
Yes, and I think the bunch also, we'd seen there was being pulled along by Sky. They're not going to take any risk, and of course, the spectators, everybody there, is just really warning the riders as they come through to slow down a lot. So I don't think Sky are going to take any risk here, because with the situation out front, there's no worry for anything in general classification, and that's what Sky are concerned about, and they're just going to roar at an easier pace as long as possible until we get some of the other teams who want to really up it and go for stage victory.
Well, I wonder if there's oil or something on that corner, whether it was just slick roads because they haven't had too much rain recently. There's been a lot of rain in this region recently, so I think that theory can be discarded. But, well, there was absolutely no grip, whatever the cause of it was.
Maybe a bit of washing up liquid.
Yeah, that would definitely do the trick.
Drop a fairy.
I wouldn't recommend it. Okay, now we see Tamarides has been picked up by Tabora. So Tamarides will get a little bit of relief from this, and perhaps he can dream that Tabora can drag him back up to those three riders in front and the two ahead of these. So 2 minutes and 3 seconds between Tabora and these two riders up front. In between are three riders. Cilingi of the Blanco squad, Dominique Rollin of Française de Jeu, and Pim Lichtart of the Hansen and Sella team. So two of the six riders that have forged ahead have been down on the floor in crashes. Plenty of others in the bunch have also come to grief, and they're tiptoeing through these final 25 kilometers, desperate to try and stay upright, and worrying moments for all of the general classification contenders, because there really is so little grip out there on those roads. Here's the three riders in between. Riding up and over, just over half a minute behind, and more as the clock counts down. Martin Cilingi is driving it as best he can, aided by Pim Lichtart, who's on the front now for Hansen and Sella, and at the back of that group in the white and blue colours of Française de Jeu is the Canadian Dominique Rollin. And Lichtart showing plenty of strength on the flat road. But with 25 kilometers to go, they are over a minute behind. And pretty soon, Fabio Tabora with Johannes Tamarides of the Euskaltel squad will surely make the junction soon. About a minute and 5 as they went through the 25 kilometer to go point. Any chance of a turn?
A small one, short one.
I've been out here all day.
And this is a section, we have a flat section in here, which is very few of the flat sections we've got today. There's about 7 or 8 kilometers here until we go on to the next climb of the day, and from there on, it's just up and down all the time. The last number of kilometers as well, the last 4 kilometers probably a bit of a flat section, but apart from that, in the last 20 kilometers, we're getting to the end of that flex section now, so in the final 20 kilometers it's going to be a real tough one for everybody out here.
Tabora is pushing on. He's got fresher legs than Tamarides. Tamarides, this is probably the section of this race that he'll probably is most suited to. He's an ex-track man, a couple of track world championships in scratch and points under his belt. So we get a shot of Danilo DeLuca And Uran has managed to get back in safely. He's on the wheel of Bradley Wiggins, wearing 181 for the Sky Pro Cycling squad, as they hit these wet roads. Worrying times, and here you have another one of the Française de Giro riders has hit the floor, and ouch, but that looks sore, because that happened at a decent clip. They were going at a good rate, as a man from Française de Giro, it was Janson. Arnaud Janson.
And how did he manage that? On a dead straight section, down he goes.
So the bunch are trying to stay organised as best they can as Janson gets ready. Join us again after these. You're very welcome back to stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. Emanuele Sella is piling on the pressure as they hit another one of these climbs. Adam Hansen in his wheel is made to feel the pain. Sella's felt lots of pain today, not least, of course, from that crash. Little signs of dirt on his jersey, as he got it wrong on that right-hander in that town a little while ago. But he's managed to get back up on his bike, no real harm done. Back up and going and pushing hard, and they've been falling like skittles all over the place. As we see the 3 riders behind from the early breakaway are continuing to chase, and Pim Lichtart, who himself has been on the ground today with a crash, looks as if he's a little bit stronger than Martin Cialinghi and Dominic Rollin. Rollin's teammate Arnaud Janson got it wrong in the bunch a little while ago and ended up on the ground. We believe that he's got going okay. Meanwhile, Tabora continues to persevere in his efforts to close the gap. 3 minutes between the peloton, including our race leader Paolini, as these 2 riders continue to try and chase down the 5 riders ahead of them.
2, 1, and 0.
Luca Paolini in the Maglia Rosa, 4th in line in the peloton, behind the riders from Garmin Sharp, Vinny Fantini and Movistar, as they work hard to try and keep their men in contention. Ventoso for the Movistar team in those distinctive national champions colours. Hansen and Sella. Very different physical characteristics, but it all amounts to around about the same amount of power on the hills. If anything, Hansen looking a little bit stronger at this point. And Hansen's perhaps wondering, well, why did I wait for him?
But I think you know, you need to get a breather, just that little bit of a dig out, and you know, for riders taking on the front, just mentally as well, when a guy goes in front of you. Although for Hansen it's not a great thing here, because he's not getting a great amount of drafting from Sella, of course, but it does help. And you know, at this point I think we did see he was calling the commissar's car. He was looking for a time check to see how far they were ahead. He was making the calculation if he would wait for Sella, as we see Tabora here pushing on, and Tomaris in difficulty. I'm not surprised, because he's been in difficulty 25 kilometres earlier on. Now I think we will see from Vinny Fantini there will be action, because there's 3 riders there in that group. There's Rambotti, there's Sant'Ambrogio, and there's also DeLuca. They will go in the attack, and I think Tabori out here, he's just part of the launching pad. Send him out there, and we will see some of these guys, as we can see the 3 of them.
Yeah, 3 riders from Vinny Fantini.
Very much to the front here, and I'll be not surprised if they go on the attack shortly. They have to, because 21 kilometres, 3:21 at the moment. The gap is growing out. If that is right, that seems to be a little bit more than I was expecting it to be.
Lichtart has almost been rejoined by Martin Cialinghi to form a duo, chasing the 2 up front. Questions in about Sant'Ambrogio's overall ambitions, whether he's a real contender, what sort of a form does he have in the time trial, can he stay anyway close to Bradley Wiggins on GC after today?
Well, I think for the general classification, he's possibly a top 10 man if he gets a really good tour. But against the Bradley Wiggins in a time trial of over 50 kilometres tomorrow, I think, you know, although the time trial is, you know, not the real suitable one for Bradley Wiggins, there's a lot of up and down, there's a lot of technical in it. We have this very difficult finish and finishing ramp. So, you know, the non-real specialist time trials will limit the losses a bit. But I think for Sant'Ambrogio, it's going to be 1.5 to 2 minutes tomorrow in the time trial.
Riders on the front of the peloton looking relatively relaxed at the moment. Bonifant of UCI Tour Le Mondial clearly has good form. He's got time to take off his sunglasses. Meanwhile, the Blanco squad get organised. Of course, Robert Hessink in the middle of those three riders is the man that they are setting it all up for. On the left-hand side, wearing number 1 for Garmin Sharp rider Hejadal. We saw him on the front there, and we looked as if he perhaps might be thinking of perhaps one of those crafty little attacks that scared everyone rigid on the third stage. Scarponi still well to the fore. Taggart for the Astana team, and plenty of Astana riders there in support of Vincenzo Nibali. So these difficult roads haven't eliminated anyone of significance yet, but lots of hard racing. Tabora now on his own again, and Tamarides has been mopped up by the peloton. It's been a tough day out there for him all day, but great effort from the Greek rider. I bet he's feeling it now, though. And he stays dutifully to the right-hand side and tries not to get in the way as the peloton sets a rhythm that doesn't seem to be putting any of the leading contenders into too much difficulty, but you can be sure it's causing all sorts of carnage further behind. Again, Hansen looks as if he has the legs of Sella, whether Sella's legs are gone as a result of that crash, whether it caused so much of a fright that his legs blocked up.
Yes, well, sometimes after the crash it can have an effect on you, and but we could see Adam Hansen was the strongest in the last 10 kilometres. On the previous climb we could see that Hansen was, quite comfortable, and he can do this sort of climb, the shorter climbs, 2 kilometres. He's a big powerful rider. They can do that, and Sella seems to be really suffering, and he's decided to go on there. He looked around, and there's no time to hang about now here because he has to push on, just coming into the 20 kilometres to go.
There were the stats for Santa Maria de Cryptis, 3.3 kilometres according to the road book, at an average elevation of 6.9%, 18% in places, and that's really going to be tough on Adam Hansen if he's going to hang on out front. Meanwhile, a little bit of action in the group behind as UCI Tour Le Mondial attempt to get involved, and it is once more Bonifant, who I said was looking very, very comfortable indeed, has decided to try his luck. 3 riders from Team Blanco on the front of the bunch, including Robert Hessink, are not all that concerned about Bonifant. 21 minutes and 36 seconds down. He's not a contender for overall honours, so he is definitely someone that they can let go up the road without any difficulty. So great opportunity perhaps for him as Adam Hansen presses on. He gets over this one, holding on to this advantage. Well, what chance perhaps that he might actually convert this into a stage win. If he did, I can assure you it would be a famous one and a wonderful victory, but there's a hell of a long way to go yet before that. Now on the third category ascent of Santa Maria de Cryptis. 2.5 minutes back to the peloton. Tabora is just hanging on with half a minute advantage, so he's not making massive inroads into Adam Hansen up front. And I would venture to suggest that Tabora could well be swept up by the bunch before they get to the top of this hill. Perhaps, Sean?
I think he'll hold on for a while because he has a quite nice advantage, but he's starting to suffer there. He was coming across to Sella and Adam Hansen. He was closing down quite well, but it seems to be hanging at the 30 seconds, and maybe he's just paying the effort. You make a real big effort, but then to get to a point where you start paying for that. And Hansen has been calculated well. He's used Sella as much as possible, got the best out of him, and now he decided to push on because Sella was just really holding him up there on that last climb.
There's Tamarides in all sorts of pain. His legs are absolutely full of lactic at this point. And Bonifant, it doesn't look as if it's going to work out for him because the bunch are relentlessly winching him in. And he's working away as best he can, but the power he's developing is just not quite enough. Now here comes Danilo DeLuca, bidding for stage honours. Oh, and spectators, don't get in the way. Do you really have to run alongside the riders? I guess they do. They're excited. and they're going to be very excited to see this. Danilo DeLuca is a big hero in this region, regardless of whatever has gone before in his career, and perhaps because of a lot of what's gone on before in his career. The winner of the 2007 Giro d'Italia, almost taken out by, and don't push the riders because the commissars don't like to see that. Giro d'Italia in the old days, I think it was very much a tradition that you would give the riders a boost over every hill, but these are different days and it's just not acceptable. Tabori's got the word from the team car that Danilo DeLuca is coming up. Great opportunity now, and riders from Lampre, from Astana have spotted the danger. Radio Shack as well, also looking to get involved, and this is a very interesting group that's developing as they come towards the top of the, well, inside the final 20 kilometres.
Scarponi following there with
and it looks as if it didn't really work out. It's the whole group, isn't it? Scarponi, Michele Scarponi, not willing to give an inch to the killer DeLuca. And Nibali, it was from Astana that closed that down, so the leading contenders. Last opportunity to collect a bottle. Team cars on the right-hand side. These riders don't really have the time. Tabora it is who sets the pace on the front, tries to split it. And Tabora will give one last push for as long as he possibly can. He's going to give a huge turn here. He's making Danilo DeLuca grimace with the effort that he's putting in, but still it's a big group. They'll be jettisoning riders at the back. There's confirmation that Adam Hansen led Emanuele Sella and Pim Lichtart over the top of this mountain classification. Join us again after these. Adam Hansen pushing on as best he can inside the final 20 kilometres. Emanuele Sella continues to grind away on that huge gear. A small man, but slow cadence for him seems to work best. It's pretty effective, but it's not as effective as the work that's been done at the moment by Adam Hansen, who now is alone in clean air ahead of Emanuele Sella. So Sella second across that hill, and now we see that there is a little bit of a split at the front, and which one of the Vini Fantini riders has managed to get involved here?
Tabora again.
Tabora it is. Very impressive work. Robert Hessink is looking as if he's feeling a little bit, but he's got two riders ahead of him from his Team Blanco squad that are setting the pace. And, well, they've drawn clear. They've certainly lots of little cracks appearing in that group. Which one of the AG2Rs was that in there? Was it Bonifant? Was it perhaps Pozzovivo? Or Carlos Betancourt? Now they hit the wet roads again. Treacherous moments for Adam Hansen out front. He's been absolutely wheel perfect so far. But now alone out front and chasing for stage glory within the last 16 kilometres. He's got one more tough hill to get over. Emanuele Sella is chasing behind. Look at the amount of water that he's throwing up from his rear wheel. Pelozzotti in there with the national champions jersey of Italy. Bradley Wiggins looking very, very controlled. Katusha continued to set a pace. Luca Paolini can't be too far behind. And indeed, Paolini is there safely ensconced in third place of this group. No, sorry, it's one of the Lampre rides. Presumably, we've got Scarponi right up there. The Maglia Rosa, much lighter shade of pink. Rigoberto Urán makes his way up on the left-hand side for Sky. And Vini Fantini have worked hard to try and split this. Tabora out front once more, but has he got the legs to do anything special in the remaining kilometres? At the back for AG2R Le Mans, Bonifant. And at the very back here, wearing number 15, Betancourt. So Betancourt is in the group. Bradley Wiggins tiptoeing his way around at the back. And of course, that's a vulnerable position as Adam Hansen gets all the encouragement that he needs to continue to persevere, to continue to push on for stage glory. And Bradley Wiggins really isn't enjoying these roads, is he? Oh, he wants to get rid of the camera motorbike, and that's a sense of the frustration and the anguish and the anxiety, I think, is probably the right word for Bradley Wiggins, because he just wants to get to that time trial tomorrow and wants to get into the real mountain stages and avoid any difficulties whatsoever on these little potential banana skin stages.
We can see the Garmin chap rather going by there, Thomas Danielson, having a look at Wiggins, and of course with the motorbike there, you know, it's always a little bit making you more nervous when the bike is beside you, especially with the camera, but also you're always concerned about the motorbike causing you a problem as you go downhill here in real treacherous conditions.
Hansen continues to lead. He's got 2 minutes and 8 seconds on the group behind, being led by the Blanco team. Robert Hessink, of course, the important man for them. He's 12th overall, 45 seconds behind, and here's a little replay of Bradley Wiggins. Anxious moments for him. He doesn't need any encroaching from the camera motorbike if he can possibly avoid it. It's the lot of a professional, though. He's going to have a lot more of it between now and the end of the race, one way or another.
And as Blanco take it up, Stephen Kreiswick here pushing on. He has to be careful with his leader, really, because guessing not very sure of himself in the descents, not to push it too much here, because you could put him in difficulty more than anybody else. But it's coming nervous times for everybody. As we can see, the bunch really stretched out here, gaps appearing, and also we see Bradley Wiggins a long ways off in that group there. He has to start moving up, but of course when we'll kick up again, he will have, you know, the power to move up in the group.
Wow, Hansen is showing no signs of relenting. He's piling on the power. A little bit of a stall in the bunch has allowed him to extend his advantage, now heading up towards 2.5 minutes. He's going to need all of those. He's got one more classified climb, the category of 4 ascent of San Silvestro, 1.4 kilometers with an average of 8.5% and 14% at its maximum. So I can tell you what, if his legs are suffering when he hits that, as I'm pretty sure they will be, he's going to feel every one of those meters. Emanuele Sella now 3/4 of a minute behind, as Taggart of Astana decides to head out for glory. They pick up Dominic Rollin and Martin Cialinghi. The men were out front for so much of this stage, but they've been hoovered up by the peloton, such as it is. Daniel Taggart strikes out for glory. Vincenzo Nibali has decided that he'll send one of his riders up front. Vinny Fantini alive to the danger. Which one of their riders is it? Is it DeLuca? Is it that crouching, hulking style of the man they call the killer?
Yes, it is his style, definitely. He's being active there in the last number of kilometers, and of course, you know, he knows the terrain well here. He knows it like the back of his hand, and he's going to, you know, try and have a go here. But Adam Hansen putting up a great battle here, like 2:20 at the moment. He's not toying at all. He's really putting up an unbelievable final.
26 years of age, wearing the jersey of the Estonian national road race champion, Daniel Taggart. Currently 50th at, well, just 3 minutes and 20 seconds, so he won't be given too much leeway, but at this point in the race, with 12 kilometers to go, not really a threat to Paolini's jersey. Paolini has been conspicuous by his absence at the front of this group. We did see him struggling a little bit, and we did see a Katusha rider going to the front. I wonder if he wasn't just trying to perhaps stall the progress of the group a little bit. So DeLuca struggling still to get on terms with Taggart, as it's Lampre that set the pace on the front of the peloton, aided with by one of the riders from Bardiani. Bardiani Valvole. We've seen some great work from them done, and a fantastic stage win taken a few days ago by Enrico Battiglin. Will he have been able to get over these hills? As sprinters go, relatively diminutive figure, could well be one of the riders that could do a job. Perazzi too, of course, is a pretty good climber. Bardiani believe they've something to chase for here.
Yes, well, it's Pirazzi again, of course. You know, he rides at times when I don't understand his tactic, and we've seen him before last year as well. Very impressive in some of the stages, but the times he goes in the attack, you know, when you're 2.5 minutes down on the race, the stage leader, the leader on the road, let's call it, you know, you start riding. Maybe the mountain classification, he thinks he can pick up a few points because he's been going for that, but he doesn't make a great calculation at times, and he's very impressive because he kind of produce great performances. We can see Bradley Wiggins has moved up there. He's in about 12th or 15th position in the group, so he's made a lot of progress on that little bit of an uphill with rather Heisdal in his wheel.
Meanwhile, Emanuele Sella is in between the leader out front, Adam Hansen, and the group behind, with a couple of riders off the front, including Danilo DeLuca and Tanel Taggart of the Astana squad. And the beautiful scenes over Abruzzo, but they've had tough conditions for the riders today. Taggart wants the motorbike to move out front. Ever so slightly delayed now. He wishes it was a little bit closer to him, as he seems to have dispensed with the threat of Danilo DeLuca. And now he's about to pick up the last of the, one of the last three of the breakaway riders. This is Pim Lichtart, who's been out front for much of the afternoon. Went away on kilometre 30, the break of 6 riders, and immediately racing past Taggart with much stronger legs, much fresher legs. Leaps away without any difficulty, as now we see Peter Weening of Arica Greenedge has managed to separate himself from the group behind. Is that Pirazzi that was just a few bike lengths and desperate behind him, and desperate to try and get on terms. Vinny Fantini isn't going well for them, is it? They've missed this one. Blanco taking responsibility once more. Is that Kruijswijk? Presumably it is. That is setting the agenda for the Blanco's team. 1:15 from Sella to Adam Hansen out front. Hansen has a shot at it, Sean.
Yes, he certainly has. I think the stage victory could be very much for Hansen, because he's looking still very strong. But for the general classification, with Taggart going out there, I would be really careful on this final descent. It's 7.5 kilometres from the finish, but it goes down for about 3.5 kilometres, and then it's pretty flat for the final 4 kilometres. But that's where you have to be careful with Taggart out front from Astana, because Nibali on the descent, he could try something, and he has a man across or out in front, let's say, and that is very important for the final couple of kilometres. If he's still out there with 4 kilometres to go and he can join with him, well, then you could see Nibali pulling away from the other favourites and taking some valuable seconds.
It's a great ride by Adam Hansen, and he is just about to hit this final classified hill of San Silvestro. 1.5 kilometres in total, takes them to around about the 7 kilometres to go mark. 14% maximum, 8.5% the average, and that's going to be really make his legs sting. But he'll have gained considerable heart by the fact that he's got the news from the team car. The 3.25 minutes is his advantage, and rising with Emanuele Sella now. Well, he's 40 seconds, a little bit less than 40 seconds behind, so still in touch. And if Sella is able to replicate the sort of descending we've seen so far and is not affected by that little spill that he had, then who's to say that he couldn't well get on back on terms with Hansen before the finish. All depends on how he climbs as well, of course, because this climb is going to shake it up a lot. Short but sharp, and a big shock it is to the riders. Interesting that Team Blanco are taking responsibility in a big way. Obviously Hessink feels very confident.
Or feared of the centre come and just really pulling it out and keeping his teammate to make a fast pace.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, he might as well be up front. Is that Nibali? Great descender, of course. He won't be afraid of these roads, and he'll look upon them as a possible opportunity. One of the Lampre riders getting it all wrong, and big cracks in the group there through that left-hander. Nibali barely, his progress barely abated for a moment, and seems to have no difficulty whatsoever in opening up a gap. Oh, and riders down. One of the Androni Giocattoli riders hits the deck. Back upright and ready to get on his bike, but that just shows you a moment's lapse in concentration. I remember Nibali a few years ago in Tour of Lombardy, racing towards glory, or at least attempting to, and got it all wrong. Inside the last 10 kilometres of stage 7 of the Giro d'Italia, as riders are pinging off the front of this ever-dwindling leading group, and we've got Adam Hansen out front for Lotto Bailasol on the ride of his life. Vinny Fantini, Bardiani also involved. And is that Lichtart of Hansen and Sella hanging on? If it is, it's very impressive indeed. .1 kilometres for Hansen, so he's right in the middle of it. Stortoni, we saw a few days ago, his big role, of course, was to give his bike to Michele Scarponi, who crashed on a descent. Stortoni now with his own opportunity to make a name for himself. Adam Hansen is on the climb. His advantage will be shrinking with every passing metre now, and he's got it all wrong. Nibali, is that Nibali? I think it is. He's got it all wrong. He immediately pounces to pick up his that distinctive blue and white bike that he's got, but Nibali just pushing too hard, and that's the danger. Mind you, he gets back going so quickly that the other leading classification contenders didn't manage to. He just gets it wrong. There's just no grip out there, and you see the way they slide across the wet roads and the marks they make, that there's just a film of water and grease between those tyres and the asphalt surface. And that Katusha rider goes down in company with them. Disappointment for him too.
Trofimov.
Is it Trofimov? Yes, much was expected of him. And he was targeted and flagged by the team as a potential. And another one of the Androni Giocattoli riders has hit the deck. Well, they've pretty much all been down. Well, several of them at least have been down today. Diego Rosa it is. One of the Venezuelans, one of the two Venezuelans on the Androni Giocattoli Venezuela squad. Italian, actually. Getting excited, so too is Adam Hansen. Oh, he's blowing hard. And now he's got, this hill is asking him lots of big questions.
Almost there. 7.4 kilometres is the summit of this climb, so he is very close to getting there, and I think he's working quite well. We can see he's spinning the gear, and that's what you've got to do, you know, just ride within yourself, not to go overboard and go into the red, as they say, because he has to make the descent, and you have to be you know, not in the too much difficulty on the climb, otherwise in the descent you have difficulty. And we have this 4 kilometres final as well, which is pretty much flat, so you have to make that calculation, save a little bit there and not blow everything on the climb.
Great pro Adam Hansen, he's been around a while now. He knows exactly how to measure his efforts to get him all the way to the top of this hill, and indeed over the other side and down towards the finish in Pescara. Can he take victory? Can he hang on? It's looking increasingly likely that he has what it takes behind. There's all sorts of activity as Hansen goes under the banner to mark the top of the final classified hill, the final hill of this stage, this 7th stage, and it's Adam Hansen that takes the climbing points once more. So that's 5 and 3 for 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I believe he's got 12 points for the mountains competition. That would put him ahead of Stefano Perazzi. And here we've got Sella, of course, who's going to score good points. Yep, so Sella too is going to be right in contention. And Sella has taken 3 and 2 is 5 and 3 is 8 and 5 is 13, so he's just 1 point behind. So Visconti, it looks, could well just about hang on to his mountains classification jersey into the time trial for another couple of days at least. But it's going to be a very close run thing, and these are very much provisional and unofficial results. I'm just adding it up, and my maths is not the most reliable, it has to be said. Look at Ryder Hejjedal as Vinny Fantini still believe it's possible.
Bradley Wiggins here in this group.
Yeah, Wiggins. Is this a concern for Bradley Wiggins, as we see Paolini too, a reasonably decent sized group, and Ryder Hejjedal there, Robert Hessink for the Blanco team, 122 behind and counting as they head across the top of this final classified climb. Riders from Radio Shack really struggling to stay involved. Colombia, a couple of Colombia riders, 3 of them in this group. And Paolini fighting hard to hang on to that Maglia Rosa for one more day. Can he hang on? It's looking increasingly likely, but he's last man in this group. He's got one teammate for company.
That is the Wiggins group.
And that's the Wiggins group. Hansen out front, Bradley Wiggins looking unconcerned at the moment. Well, he just has that style though, doesn't he? It's such a smooth, almost effortless style on the bike, but you can be sure that there's a lot of effort going into it. And Rigoberto Urán and Sergio Henao, the two Colombians, looking after him. Adam Hansen now into the descent, tiptoeing away. He knows he's got
50 seconds in advantage of Sella roughly, and we could see the other favourites there. They were roughly at 2 minutes at the moment, so it looks like that, you know, Hansen, the stage victory should be for him if he gets down the descent safely, which he is doing very well. It looks like stage victory for Adam Hansen, but big difference in the general classification. A lot of groups here, and you know, they're scattered all over this final climb.
Yeah, it's definitely going to shake up GC a little bit, and it's going to get another shake tomorrow. We got a quick sight of Emanuele Sella running in second place on the road on the stage, about 50 seconds down, and he's got it wrong. Is this Sella? I think it is. Emanuele Sella, second time today he's been on the floor, and he's about to be mopped up by the group, the leading group, or the second group on the road. As Hansen leads up front, and the riders, there's big gaps between them. Let's get another shot of this, and Sella just pushing too hard. Oh, and frustration. The only thing you will say about this is that there's so little group on the roads that the riders will slide a bit, and there isn't quite the same amount of road rash, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
No, but Sella seems to be sliding out very, very easily there. And, you know, there's a lot of the other riders getting around there, and, you know, Hansen is going down at the same rate. I don't know, is it his tyres or is he just panicking in the corner? And if you panic and you go too heavy on the brakes.
Riders down once more, and they're falling like 9 pins at the moment. Bradley Wiggins is down once more, and this, well, he has been looking perhaps a little bit nervous, and he hasn't been enjoying this stage, you can be sure about it, and a little bit slow to get going here. He's well outside the 3 kilometre point, to remember, so he needs to try and get back on terms with the overall contenders. And it was Bradley Wiggins that was first to go down there, one of the Katusha riders involved, and Wiggins back in the saddle and back going, but
and not good for the confidence when you fall like that, and you still have a number of kilometres to get down the descent. Well, you know, you get scared, and then you do not descend well, and you just lose time from there on.
A team car comes up beside him, and he gives a little nod as if to say, you know, don't need any attention right now. And he really, I mean, those roads really are treacherous. It's very, very you know, we can't say it enough. Adam Hansen seems to have negotiated the worst of it. He's hit the flat section at the bottom of the hill, so Adam Hansen is racing towards glory. Haven't got an update on his time advantage in the last few kilometres. Presumably it's shrinking, but by the same token, he's managed to survive that difficult moment. Bradley Wiggins, by contrast, has dropped behind some of the leading contenders. And I assume one of them was Vincenzo Nibali. I presume Ryder Hagedal was running ahead of him as well.
Yes, I think all the favourites are pretty much up there. Cat 11s I haven't seen, but I have seen, you know, the Nibali, we've seen Hagedal, we have seen Scarponi, so most of the favourites pretty much up there at the moment, as we can see here, this group. Scarponi up there, DeLuca there, but riders everywhere, as we can see. They're just 1s and 2s, but Bradley Wiggins, he's really tiptoeing down here. He's lost all his confidence, and he's just not getting around the corners at all, because riders are just coming by him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's really not enjoying it. Is it lack of grip? Another rider goes down, and that's an indication that maybe Bradley Wiggins is doing the right thing, because he just wants to get to the end of this. Maybe he's thinking, look, I'm going to take minutes out of these guys in the time trial. I really do believe in my ability in the mountains as well, and this is just about damage limitation and making sure that I don't get injured. Simone Stortoni for the Lampre squad out front. Scarponi's in there as well. We see
Cat 11's in there.
Yeah, that must be Cat 11's in the red of BMC. as the camera, not surprisingly, heads back to see Bradley Wiggins. It's been a very difficult first week for Wiggins, losing 17 seconds on stage 3, or was it 4? And other little difficulties along the way. We saw yesterday getting caught behind a crash on his way back after a mechanical and having a chase that he didn't really want. So this was just a week to be got through for Bradley Wiggins, and he'll look to try and now he's finally been joined by a couple of teammates. So the two Colombians, Henao and Urtasun, have dropped back and picked him up, so you can forget about all your conspiracy theories. The two Colombians absolutely delighted to try and help their team leader, who's going through all sorts of horrors here.
Bradley Wiggins seemed to have a lot of pain in his elbow, on his right elbow, that he seemed to be not comfortable with that on the braking as well. And of course that's the way he slided down on his right, on his right elbow, and he did slide down on his right side. Looks to be in pain a bit there at the moment.
So is Bradley Wiggins injured, and will this have implications for him for the rest of this race? Sitting on the wheel of his two teammates up front within the last couple of kilometres, Adam Hansen steals a little look across, doesn't want to believe yet. That's the smile that says it's going to happen for you, Adam. It's been an absolutely stunning ride in the break since the 30th kilometre, so out there for more than 150 kilometres today for Adam Hansen, and he's racing towards glory in the Giro d'Italia stage 7. Surprised us all really by the way that he was able to get rid of Hansen Sella's lamp brake attempt to control things and chase down on Adam Hansen. And as much as anything, I think they're actually trying to make sure that they put some time between themselves and Bradley Wiggins behind. That's the main concern. Luca Paolini's in there, and Luca Paolini is going to retain his leader's jersey, as Bradley Wiggins is even struggling to stay with his teammates. But now he's negotiated the worst of it. He's hit this flat section of road within the last couple of kilometres. So Adam Hansen heading towards victory. It's been a wonderful day. He's well, definitely the biggest victory of his career, and it's absolutely pelting down in the finish at Pescara, but he doesn't feel the rain right now. He's done the hard work, and now he can enjoy the moment. No sign of a group behind. He has a little look. All he's going to see is cars, but he'll be kept up to date with the fact that he's clear and racing towards glory on stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. Thumbs up to the car behind for all the support that they've given him. It's been an absolutely copybook ride. A couple of his breakaway companions were on the floor, but he managed to ride steadily, ride strongly all day, raced clear of Hansen Sella with a couple of climbs to go, and now he can freewheel to glory in stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. Steals another little look behind and can hardly believe it. 31 years of age, Adam Hansen takes victory in stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. And this, by some considerable margin, the best win of his career. Two figures in the air. Hansen wins for Australia, for Lotto Belisol, and most of all for himself. 4.5 hours in the saddle, a tough day. He won't be too much worried about the gap that he's got to the riders behind. It's Kruijswijk and Hessink that well, there's three Blancos in there piling on the pressure to try and make most of it. Presumably they're trying to put as much daylight as they can. There's not a whole lot of daylight in Pescara today, but you know what I mean. Try and put as much distance as they possibly can between themselves and Wiggins behind. Luca Paolini sits in the back of the group.
Don't see Nibali in there, so he's another one simply missing of the big favourites. We can see
Cadel Evans is certainly in there. Hejadal is there, and that's the important thing. Hansen going for the bonus seconds on offer as well. Bardiani, Valvoli, which one of their riders has managed to get in there? Is it Battaglin again?
Yes, Battaglin.
Looks like Battaglin, who we saw taking stage honours a few days ago, and you would expect him to mop up this sprint, and with it the bonus seconds. So none of the leading GC contenders are going to be able to get into the top 3 positions, but they'll be delighted to have survived a very, very tough day in the saddle in stage 7 of Giro d'Italia. Marina di San Salvo to Pescara And meanwhile, a little bit further back, riders coming in dribs and drabs. Taggart, who was on the attack, arrives in alone. The Estonian rider did a solid job. Still, we wait for Bradley Wiggins. And 1:15, I believe, was the gap to the riders behind Adam Hansen. So the clock ticks down.
Danielson at 150, just coming over the line. And this is the group of Nibali.
Yeah, so Vincenzo Nibali did get going, but did lose out a little bit. The Colombian riders drilling it on the front. They're the ones that are causing lots of pain. We see the Sky train just behind, and this is Paolini coming in. So Paolini is actually in this group, just arriving in, and the Sky team managed to drag themselves onto the back of this group. So that's great news and great work by the Sky squad, that they haven't lost out to Vincenzo Nibali in any significant way.
I cannot see Nibali in that group, although his teammate is pulling along. It looks like that he possibly is in there.
So is Vincenzo Nibali in there? No, there's a couple of Astana riders. Would that suggest perhaps that Nibali is in front? We will get confirmation of that. It's absolutely certain, though, that the Sky squad, led by Bradley Wiggins, were in that group. 2.5 minutes down, so maybe over a minute lost by Bradley Wiggins. That could be very, very significant in terms of the overall destination of Giro d'Italia. And riders are going to be coming in dribs and drabs for a long time yet, because you can be pretty sure that no one was going to take too many risks on that descent if they could possibly avoid it, especially in the groups behind, no longer chasing for honours.
Carpets not looking happy.
No.
As there will be many more coming in not happy. What a day, and what a weather.
Yes, another one of those days in Abruzzo. We've seen them before. Adam Hansen, almost in disbelief, but what a fantastic ride by him this afternoon, Sean.
Yes, well, a real strong ride. In the end, I was concerned about him. A big guy like that, he might start suffering on the steep climbs, but not at all. And riding away from Sella, a real good climber. That it was amazing. He was just on one of these good days, and certainly a deserving stage winner.
Well, we understand that Nibali definitely was in the first group near the back, so that's good news for Vincenzo Nibali. Less good news indeed for Bradley Wiggins and co. Caught out badly on that descent, as Enrico Battiglin leads the group in ahead of Damiano Caruso, and just managing to get up and over the top of him was Danilo DeLuca. So let's hear from Hansen now.
Adam, talk us through the stage and when you started to realise that you had a hope of taking the victory.
Well, when the breakaway formed, normally I'm pretty good in breakaway, and when we had good time, I thought, okay, maybe it's a good chance.
And were you surprised to drop the other riders on the climbs? You looked very strong today.
Well, I don't usually climb so bad. Okay, against specialists, it's a different story, but in a breakaway, normally I'm not such a bad climber.
What does it mean to you? I mean, Lars Bak won here last year. He's another rider that's normally working for other riders. It must be a great feeling to get your own opportunities. Oh,
for sure. Lotto Bellicel's won stage here, I think, the last 4 years. And in the post meeting for this race, Mark Sajan said one of us will also win this race. So I thought maybe I'm the lucky one.
Okay, great to see a breakaway rider win. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So say all of us. Dan Lloyd said it. Great to see the breakaway rider win, and great strength shown by Adam Hansen. And he's relatively shy and reserved, but certainly produced great power.
Yeah, I'm here with the surprise pink jersey.
Well, Dan Lloyd getting ready for another interview, but let's get confirmation of the stage results. Adam Hansen takes the victory, just over a minute between himself and Enrico Battiglin, who leads in the group, including Cadel Evans in 6th place, Mauro Sant'Ambrogio in 4th place, Ryder Hagedal there in 10th place. So the leading contenders all safely ensconced in Group 1, which we also understand also included Vincenzo Nibali.
And looking at the finish line there, it looks like Inchasti is going to move into the pink jersey, because he was one of the guys in that leading group of chasers with Evans, Hagedal and co.
Bueno, sinceramente estoy un poco todavía sorprendido y mira, esto es un premio después de tanto trabajo, tanto para mí como
well, no doubt that he's absolutely thrilled, and why wouldn't he be? With Luca Paolini not quite able to hang on in that group out front. We did see him at the back of the group, not the lead group though. And it's Beñat Inchausti of the Movistar squad that moves into the overall lead heading into the time trial. Seen over Pescara many times. It has played host to Giro d'Italia, and a few more exciting stages than this one. Beñat Inchausti, it is in the lead. So Inchausti takes over the Maglia Rosa by just 5 seconds from Vincenzo Nibali, who has gained great advantage from today's stage. Ryder Hagedal moves into 3rd. Sant'Ambrogio and Evans in 5th and 6th. Hesink looking good too, just 19 seconds down. The big loser, Bradley Wiggins, who slips out of the top 10. Peter Weening, Robert Kizerlovsky also be delighted with that result. Samuel Sanchez, we didn't see much of him all day, but he's still there or thereabouts in the front group at the end of the day. So was Kruijswijk doing great work for Team Blanco. Scarpoti safely in there.